The moment Claire Whitmore slid those divorce papers across her husband's desk, she knew there was no going back. For 3 years she had been invisible, a ghost haunting the halls of Adrien Varela's empire. He was a man who commanded fear with a single glance, who built kingdoms on secrets and silence. But today she was done being silent. Today, she was choosing herself. If you want to see how a forgotten wife brings a mafia boss to his knees, stay until the end. And don't forget to hit that like button and comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime that felt too cheerful for what was about to happen. Claire Whitmore stepped into the corridor of Varela Holdings, her heels clicking against marble floors that had been polished to an almost mirror-like shine. The sound echoed through the empty hallway. It was late, past business hours, exactly as she'd planned. Her fingers tightened around the manila envelope in her hands. Inside were divorce papers that had taken her 6 months to finally prepare, 6 months of gathering courage she didn't know she possessed. The same courage that had allowed her to pack her belongings 3 days ago while Adrien was overseas. The same courage that had carried her out of the penthouse that had been her prison for 3 years. Claire had dressed carefully for this moment. A tailored navy suit that made her look professional, powerful, everything she hadn't felt in years. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple knot, and she wore minimal makeup. She wanted Adrien to see her clearly, to see the woman she'd become in his absence, not the girl he'd married. The secretary's desk sat empty and dark. Claire was glad for that. She didn't need witnesses for what was about to unfold. She walked past it without hesitation, her reflection following her in the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the glittering cityscape of Chicago. From up here, the world looked small, controllable. She wondered if that's how Adrien saw everything, including her. His office door loomed ahead, made of dark wood with his name etched in silver letters. Adrien Varela, CEO. Such a clean corporate title for a man whose real power came from places the sunlight never touched. Claire didn't knock. She'd stopped asking permission for things the day she moved out. The door swung open to reveal an office that could have been photographed for an architectural magazine. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined one wall, filled with leather-bound volumes that Adrien had probably never read. A massive desk dominated the center of the room, and behind it sat the man who had once made her heart race with excitement rather than anxiety. Adrien Varela looked up from his computer, and for just a moment, genuine surprise flickered across his features. He was as devastatingly handsome as the day she'd met him. Dark hair with just a touch of silver at the temples, sharp jaw, eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore his suit like armor, every line perfect, every detail calculated. Claire. Her name on his lips sounded foreign, like a word he'd forgotten how to pronounce. "What are you doing here?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she crossed the office with measured steps, her eyes never leaving his face. She watched him take in her appearance, saw the moment he registered that something was different. She wasn't the timid woman who'd once waited hours for scraps of his attention. When she reached his desk, she set the envelope down in front of him with a soft thud that seemed to echo in the silence. "What's this?" Adrien reached for it, but she spoke before he could open it. "Divorce papers." Her voice came out steady, calm. She'd practiced this moment 100 times in front of her bathroom mirror. "I need you to sign them." The words hung in the air between them like smoke. Adrien's hand froze halfway to the envelope. His expression shifted through several emotions too quickly for her to track. Confusion, disbelief, and then something that might have been anger. "Divorce papers," he repeated slowly, as if testing the words. Then he did something she didn't expect. He laughed. It was a short, harsh sound without any real humor in it. "Is this a joke? Do I look like I'm joking?" Adrien studied her face, and she forced herself to hold his gaze without flinching. After 3 years of being married to him, she knew his tells. The slight tightening around his eyes meant he was reassessing the situation. The way his jaw clenched meant he was trying to control his temper. "We're not getting divorced, Claire." He pushed the envelope back toward her without opening it. "Whatever this is about, we can discuss it at home." "I don't live there anymore." That got his attention. Adrien stood up slowly, his full height adding to the intimidation factor he wielded so well. He was over 6 feet of controlled power, and he'd learned long ago how to use his presence as a weapon. "What do you mean, you don't live there anymore?" I mean exactly what I said. I moved out 3 days ago. I have an apartment across town. My attorney's information is in the envelope. Claire gestured toward the papers he'd rejected. Sign them, Adrien. Let's do this civilly. Civilly. Adrien came around the desk, and Claire had to force herself not to step back. He stopped close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and dark that used to make her feel safe. You want to talk about civility? You move out of our home without a word, you ambush me in my office with divorce papers, and you want civility? I wanted a lot of things in this marriage, Claire said quietly. I never got them. Something flickered in Adrien's eyes. What are you talking about? I'm talking about 3 years, Adrien. 3 years of living like a ghost in your life. 3 years of eating dinner alone, sleeping alone, existing alone while you built your empire and pretended I didn't exist. That's not... Don't. She held up a hand. Don't tell me that's not true. Don't stand there and gaslight me about my own experience. I lived it. Every single day. Adrien's jaw worked like he was chewing on words he couldn't quite get out. Finally, he said, If you were unhappy, you should have said something. The laugh that escaped Claire's throat was bitter. I did. Hundreds of times. You just never listened. When? Adrien demanded. When did you ever tell me you wanted a divorce? I didn't say I wanted a divorce. I said I was lonely. I said I missed you. I said I wanted to talk, to connect, to feel like I mattered to you, but you were always too busy, always had somewhere else to be, someone else to meet with. Claire's voice remained steady, but she could feel the 3 years of pain behind every word. Do you know what it's like to be invisible to the person who's supposed to love you most? Adrien's expression hardened. I gave you everything, a home, security, anything you could possibly want, except yourself. Claire's interruption was soft but sharp. You gave me everything except the one thing I actually needed. You. This is ridiculous. Adrien turned away, running a hand through his hair in a gesture that might have been frustration or might have been something deeper. You're my wife. On paper, maybe. But when was the last time you treated me like one? When was the last time we had a real conversation? When was the last time you came home before midnight? Claire paused, letting the question settle. When was the last time you even looked at me the way you're looking at me right now? Adrien spun back to face her. What is that supposed to mean? It means this is the first time in years that you've actually seen me. The first time I felt like a real person to you instead of just another piece of furniture in your penthouse. That's not fair. Fair? Claire felt her carefully constructed composure begin to crack. You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that I spent our first anniversary alone because you were in New York on business? Is it fair that I planned a romantic dinner for our second anniversary and you didn't come home at all? Is it fair that on our third anniversary last month you forgot it entirely? Adrien opened his mouth, then closed it. The guilty flash in his eyes told her everything. You did forget, Claire said, something like sad triumph in her voice. I knew it. I sat in that restaurant for 2 hours waiting for you. The waiter felt so sorry for me that he comped my wine. Do you know how humiliating that was? Claire, I'm done being humiliated. I'm done being an afterthought. I'm done living in a marriage that exists only in legal documents. She pointed at the envelope. Sign the papers, Adrien. Let me go. No. The single word came out flat and final. Adrien crossed his arms over his chest, and Claire recognized the stance. It was his negotiation posture, the one he used in boardrooms when he was about to lay down the law. No? Claire echoed. You're not leaving me. We're not getting divorced. End of discussion. You don't get to decide that anymore? I'm your husband. You stopped being my husband a long time ago, Claire said. Now you're just the man whose last name I share. There's a difference. Adrien's eyes narrowed. Is there someone else? The question caught her off guard. What? You heard me. Is there another man? Is that what this is really about? For a moment, Claire could only stare at him. Then she laughed. A real laugh this time, though it held more irony than humor. That's what you think? That I need another man to realize I deserve better than being ignored for 3 years? Answer the question. No, Adrien, there's no one else. There's just me, finally finding enough self-respect to walk away from a marriage that's been dead for longer than either of us wants to admit. Adrien's hands clenched at his sides. It's not dead. Then what is it? What would you call a marriage where the husband and wife are strangers? Where they can go days without speaking? Where one person has given up everything and the other has given up nothing? I built an empire. I don't care about your empire. The words burst out of Claire before she could stop them. I never cared about the money or the power or the penthouse with the perfect view. I just wanted you, the man I fell in love with, the man who used to look at me like I was the only person in the room. I still... Don't. Claire held up her hand again. Don't say you still feel that way. Don't insult both of us with that lie. If you felt that way, you would have shown it. You would have made time. You would have chosen me, at least occasionally, over whatever deal or meeting or crisis was happening in your business. Adrien's expression shifted into something harder, more defensive. My business keeps us safe. It keeps you safe. Do you have any idea what I deal with on a daily basis? The threats, the dangers, the people who would hurt you just to get to me? And did you ever once ask if I wanted that kind of safety? The kind that comes with being locked away and forgotten? You're being dramatic. I'm being honest. Maybe for the first time in years. Claire picked up the envelope and held it out to him. Sign the papers, Adrien. If you ever cared about me at all, give me this. Let me have my life back. Adrien stared at the envelope like it was a bomb. I'm not signing anything. Then you'll be served by my attorney. This was me trying to do it the easy way, the respectful way. Claire set the envelope back down on his desk. But make no mistake, I'm leaving, with or without your signature. She turned to go, and Adrien's voice stopped her. Why now? Claire looked back over her shoulder. What? Why now? Adrien repeated. If you've been this unhappy for so long, why are you doing this now? Why tonight? For a moment, Claire considered not answering. Then she decided he deserved at least this much truth. Because last week, I saw myself in the mirror and didn't recognize who was looking back. Because I realized I'd stopped being a person and started being a thing. Mrs. Varela, the Mafia boss's wife, the woman who exists only in relation to you. She paused. And because I finally understood that you're never going to change. You're never going to wake up one day and realize what you're losing. So I have to be the one to walk away. Something in Adrien's face shifted, and for just a second, Claire thought she saw actual pain there. But then it was gone, replaced by the cold mask he wore so well. You're making a mistake, he said quietly. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Claire opened the office door. Goodbye, Adrien. This conversation isn't over. Yes, Claire said without looking back. It is. She walked out of his office, down the corridor, and into the elevator with her head held high. Only when the doors closed and she was alone did she allow herself to shake. Her hands trembled as she pressed the button for the ground floor, and she had to lean against the wall to keep herself upright. 3 years of marriage ended in less than 15 minutes. The elevator descended, carrying her away from the life she'd known and towards something unknown. Claire closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. The hardest part was over. At least, that's what she thought. Adrien stood in his office, staring at the envelope on his desk like it might suddenly sprout legs and walk away. His mind was racing, trying to process what had just happened. Claire wanted a divorce. His wife, his quiet, gentle wife who never raised her voice or made demands, had just walked into his office and calmly destroyed his world. He picked up the envelope, his fingers tight enough to crumple the edges. Part of him wanted to throw it across the room. Part of him wanted to chase after Claire and demand she explain what had gotten into her. Part of him wanted to tear the papers to shreds and pretend this conversation had never happened. Instead, he opened the envelope and pulled out the documents inside. They were real. Official legal papers, professionally prepared, requesting the dissolution of their marriage. His eyes scanned the words, taking in phrases like irreconcilable differences and equitable division of assets. At the bottom of the first page was a signature line with his name neatly typed beneath it. Adrien set the papers down and reached for his phone. He pulled up his contacts and found the name he needed, Marcus Chen, his head of security and the closest thing he had to a friend. Boss? Marcus answered on the second ring. Everything okay? I need you to find out where Claire is staying. There was a pause. Mrs. Varela? Yes, Marcus. My wife. She says she moved out 3 days ago. I need her address. Didn't know she'd moved out. Neither did I. Adrien's voice came out harder than he intended. Can you find her or not? Give me an hour. You have 30 minutes. Adrien hung up and tossed the phone onto his desk. He walked to the windows and looked out at the city sprawled below him. Chicago glittered in the darkness, 1,000 lights marking 1,000 lives he'd built his empire around. He'd spent the last 10 years establishing himself as someone who couldn't be moved, couldn't be shaken, couldn't be beaten. He'd survived challenges from rival organizations, investigations from federal authorities, and attempts on his life that would have killed lesser men. But apparently he couldn't keep his own wife from walking out the door. Adrien's reflection stared back at him from the window, and he barely recognized the man he saw there. When had he become this? When had the business consumed so much of him that he'd stopped seeing the one person who was supposed to matter most? His phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Found her. Sending address now. The address came through a moment later. Adrien memorized it, then grabbed his jacket from the back of his chair. He was halfway to the door when he stopped. What was he going to do? Show up at her apartment and demand she come home? Drag her back to the penthouse? That would only prove her point, that he saw her as something to be controlled rather than someone to be cherished. But he couldn't just let her go either. The thought of Claire being somewhere he couldn't reach her, living a life he wasn't part of, made something twist in his chest that he didn't want to examine too closely. Adrien looked back at the divorce papers on his desk. He should talk to his own attorney, find out his options, figure out how to fight this properly. That's what the logical part of his brain said. The other part, the part that had watched Claire walk away with her shoulders straight and her eyes clear, wondered if maybe she was right. Maybe they had been strangers for longer than he wanted to admit. His phone buzzed again. This time it was his assistant. Mr. Hale is here to see you. Dominic Hale. Adrien had almost forgotten about their scheduled meeting. Dominic was his most trusted advisor, the man who'd been at his side for the past 7 years, helping him navigate the dangerous waters of their world. Send him in, Adrien texted back. A minute later, Dominic walked through the door. He was a lean man in his 40s with sharp features and sharper eyes that missed nothing. He took one look at Adrien's face and frowned. What happened? Adrien gestured at the divorce papers on his desk. My wife just handed me those. Dominic crossed the office and picked up the papers, scanning them quickly. His expression remained carefully neutral. When did this happen? About 10 minutes ago. She walked in here, put those on my desk, and told me she'd moved out. Moved out? Dominic set the papers down. Did she say why? She said... Adrien paused, trying to remember Claire's exact words. She said she's been invisible for 3 years, that I've ignored her, neglected her, that she's done being an afterthought in her own marriage. Dominic's expression didn't change. Is she right? The question caught Adrien off guard. What? Is she right? Have you been neglecting her? Adrien wanted to say no. He wanted to defend himself, to list all the things he'd done for Claire, the home he'd provided, the security, the lifestyle. But the words stuck in his throat because somewhere deep down, he knew the answer. I've been busy, he said finally. We're all busy. Dominic moved to the window, looking out at the same view Adrien had been contemplating. But that's not what I asked. What do you want me to say? That I've been a terrible husband? That I let my business consume my life and forgot about the woman I married? Adrien's voice rose. Fine. Maybe I did. But I was building something. I was trying to create a legacy, an empire that would protect both of us. Did she ask for an empire? No, Adrien admitted. She asked for me, and I didn't give her that. Dominic turned back to face him. So what are you going to do about it? I don't know. Adrien sank into his chair, suddenly exhausted. She won't even talk to me. She just wants me to sign the papers and let her go. And will you? No. The word came out immediately, instinctively. I'm not letting her go. Then you need to figure out what you're willing to change. Dominic's voice was matter-of-fact. Because if you think you can win her back by being the same man she just walked away from, you're deluding yourself. Adrien knew Dominic was right, but the admission tasted bitter. I don't know how to be different. This is who I am. Then maybe that's the problem. Dominic headed for the door. I'll leave you to think about it. But Adrien, whatever you decide, do it soon. The longer she's gone, the harder it'll be to bring her back. After Dominic left, Adrien sat alone in his office, the divorce papers in front of him like an accusation. He thought about Claire, really thought about her for the first time in months. When had he last asked about her day? When had he last surprised her with dinner or flowers or anything that showed he was thinking about her? When had he last told her he loved her? Adrien couldn't remember. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He pulled out his phone and opened his messages with Claire. Their text history was depressingly sparse, mostly her asking when he'd be home, and him responding with vague times or single-word answers. The last message from her was from 3 days ago. Working late again? He'd never responded. Adrien scrolled further back, looking for evidence that they'd once been different. And there it was, messages from years ago, from when they were first dating. Flirty texts, inside jokes, plans for the future. Claire's messages had been full of emojis and exclamation points, full of life and warmth. When had that stopped? When had her messages become short and careful, stripped of personality? When had he killed the woman he'd fallen in love with? The thought made his hands shake. Adrien set the phone down and forced himself to breathe. He couldn't think like that. Claire wasn't gone, she was just hurt. And hurt could be healed, couldn't it? His phone rang. Marcus's name appeared on the screen. Yeah? Boss, I've got eyes on Mrs. Varella's building. Do you want me to maintain surveillance? Adrien started to say yes, then stopped. That's exactly what Claire had accused him of, treating her like something to be controlled and monitored rather than someone with her own agency. No, he said finally. No surveillance. I want you to make sure she's safe, but I don't want her followed. Understood? Understood. Marcus sounded surprised. Anything else? Yeah, I need you to find out everything you can about the past 6 months of her life. Where she's been going, who she's been talking to, what she's been doing, but I want it done quietly. She doesn't find out about it. I'm on it. Adrien hung up and stared at the divorce papers again. Claire thought this was over, that she could just walk away and start a new life without him. But she was wrong. He wasn't going to let 3 years of marriage end without a fight. The question was, what kind of fight would actually win her back? Claire's new apartment was nothing like the penthouse she'd shared with Adrien. It was small, just 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, and a combined living room and kitchen. The furniture was second-hand, the paint on the walls was slightly faded, and the view from her single window showed nothing but the building across the street. It was perfect. Claire dropped her purse on the kitchen counter and kicked off her heels, feeling the tension drain from her body. She'd done it. She'd actually confronted Adrien and lived to tell the tale. Her hands were still shaking slightly from the adrenaline, but underneath the nerves was something else. Pride. For the first time in 3 years, she'd stood up for herself. She'd looked Adrien Varela in the eye and demanded better, and she'd walked away when he refused to give it to her. Her phone buzzed. Claire pulled it out, expecting maybe a message from her attorney, Sarah Chen, asking how the confrontation had gone. Instead, the screen showed a text from an unknown number. You made a mistake tonight. Claire stared at the message, her blood running cold. She'd changed her number when she moved out, given it only to Sarah and a handful of other people she trusted. Adrien didn't have it. At least, he wasn't supposed to. Another message appeared. You can't run from him. You can't run from this. Go back before it's too late. Who is this? Claire typed back. The response came immediately. Someone trying to help you. Adrien Varela doesn't let go of what's his, and whether you like it or not, you're his. Claire's hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from adrenaline. She thought about calling the police, but what would she tell them? That her estranged husband's world was full of dangerous people who might be threatening her. They'd probably tell her it was a domestic issue and to contact her attorney. She thought about calling Adrien, then immediately dismissed the idea. This was probably exactly what he wanted, to scare her into running back to him. Instead, she blocked the number and set her phone face down on the counter. She wasn't going to let threats push her around. She'd lived with fear for 3 years, afraid of disrupting Adrien's carefully controlled world, afraid of demanding more than he was willing to give. She was done being afraid. Claire walked to her bedroom and changed into comfortable clothes, yoga pants and an old college sweatshirt that she'd packed away because Adrien had always hated how sloppy it looked. Then she made herself a cup of tea and curled up on her secondhand couch with a book she'd been meaning to read for months. For the first time in years, she felt like she could breathe. Her phone buzzed again. Claire almost ignored it, then decided to check in case it was Sarah. It wasn't. It was another unknown number, another message. Check your email. Against her better judgment, Claire opened her email app. At the top of her inbox was a message from an address she didn't recognize. The subject line read, "The truth about your marriage." Claire's finger hovered over the delete button. This was probably spam, or worse, another attempt to manipulate her. But something made her click on it anyway. The email contained no text, just a series of attached images. Claire opened the first one and felt her world tilt. It was a screenshot of a text message conversation. On one side were messages from someone named D. Hale to Adrien. On the other side were Adrien's responses. The conversation was from 2 years ago, and the messages made Claire's stomach turn. D. Hale. She's asking questions about your schedule again. Adrien. Handle it. I don't want her interfering with business. D. Hale. I've been intercepting her calls to your office. Should I continue? Adrien. Yes, keep her occupied and out of the way. Claire scrolled to the next image. More messages. These from just over a year ago. D. Hale, Sut. Mrs. Varela tried to plan a surprise dinner for your anniversary. I told your driver to take an alternate route so you wouldn't encounter it. Adrien. Good. The less drama, the better. The next image showed a different conversation, this one between D. Hale and someone labeled unknown contact. Unknown. Has she discovered anything? D. Hale. No, she suspects nothing. As far as Mrs. Varela knows, her husband is simply a busy businessman. Unknown. Keep it that way. If she becomes a problem, we'll handle her. Claire's hands were shaking so badly she nearly dropped her phone. Someone had been manipulating her marriage from the inside. Someone had been intercepting her attempts to connect with Adrien, sabotaging her efforts to save their relationship. And Adrien had known about it, or at least he'd approved of it. The final image in the email was a photograph taken from a distance. Claire sitting alone in a restaurant, checking her watch. She recognized the dress she was wearing. It was from their 3rd anniversary, the night Adrien never showed up. The night he said he'd forgotten. Except according to these messages, he hadn't forgotten. He'd been told about the dinner, and he'd chosen not to come anyway. Claire felt tears burning in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She'd cried enough over Adrien Varela. Instead, she took screenshots of every image, forwarded them to her attorney, and then sat back on her couch. She'd thought their marriage had died from neglect. But this was something else entirely. This was deliberate. This was calculated. This was sabotage. The question was why? Why would someone want to destroy her marriage from the inside? And who was D. Hale? Claire pulled out her laptop and did a quick search. Dominic Hale, Adrien Varela. The results showed dozens of articles and photos. Dominic Hale was apparently Adrien's right-hand man, his most trusted advisor, someone who'd been with him for years, someone who'd been systematically destroying Claire's attempts to connect with her husband. Her phone rang, startling her. Sarah Chen's name appeared on the screen. Sarah? Claire, I just got your email. What the hell is this? I don't know. Someone sent it to me. Anonymous email, screenshots of conversations between Adrien and someone named Dominic Hale. Claire's voice was remarkably steady. They've been manipulating me, us, for years. This is... Sarah paused. If these are real, this changes everything. This isn't just about a failed marriage anymore. This is conspiracy, possibly harassment. Can we use it? Maybe. I need to verify the images first, make sure they're authentic. But Claire, if this is real, you need to be careful. Someone sent you these for a reason. Someone wants you to know the truth. The question is, why now? Claire looked at the screenshots on her phone again. Maybe someone wants me to know what I'm really walking away from. Or maybe someone wants you to go after Adrien with everything you've got. Sarah's voice was cautious. Either way, this just got a lot more complicated. Are you somewhere safe? I'm at my apartment. Good. Stay there tonight. Lock your doors, keep your phone on. I'm going to have these images analyzed first thing in the morning, and then we'll figure out our next move. After hanging up with Sarah, Claire sat in the silence of her small apartment. The book she'd been planning to read lay forgotten on the couch beside her. Instead, she stared at the screenshots on her phone, memorizing every word, every implication. Her marriage hadn't just died, it had been murdered, and someone wanted her to know exactly who was holding the knife. Claire didn't sleep that night. She sat on her couch until dawn, going through the screenshots over and over, trying to make sense of the web of manipulation that had been woven around her life. Every message felt like another nail in the coffin of what she'd thought her marriage was. By the time sunlight started filtering through her small window, she'd memorized every word, every damning piece of evidence that someone, she still didn't know who, had delivered to her doorstep. Her phone rang at 7 in the morning. Sarah Chen. "Tell me you got some sleep," Sarah said without preamble. "I'll sleep when this makes sense." Claire stood and walked to her kitchen, putting on coffee with her free hand. "Did you find anything?" "I had my tech guy run the images through every authentication program we have. Claire, they're real. The metadata checks out. The message formatting matches Adrien's known communication patterns, and the phone numbers trace back to devices registered to both Adrien Varela and Dominic Hale." Claire gripped the counter. Hearing it confirmed made it somehow worse. "So what does this mean?" "It means your marriage was sabotaged, systematically, for at least 2 years, maybe longer." Sarah's voice turned hard. "And it means we have leverage. If Adrien fights this divorce, we can show that he actively worked to isolate you, to prevent communication, to damage the relationship. Any judge would take that into consideration." "I don't want leverage," Claire surprised herself with the words. "I just want out." "I know, but you need to be prepared for the possibility that Adrien won't make this easy. Men like him don't like losing control." As if summoning him with her words, Claire's doorbell rang. She froze, coffee pot in hand. "Sarah, someone's at my door." "Don't answer it, not until you know who it is." Claire crept to the door and looked through the peephole. Her heart jumped into her throat. Adrien stood in the hallway, wearing the same suit from last night, looking like he hadn't slept either. His hand was raised to knock again. "It's him," Claire whispered into the phone. "Do not open that door. You don't have to talk to him. You don't have to—" But Claire was already unlocking the deadbolt. She didn't know why. Maybe it was muscle memory from 3 years of doing what Adrien expected. Maybe it was the need to see his face when she asked him about Dominic Hale. Maybe it was just exhaustion making her reckless. "Claire, wait!" Sarah's voice cut off as Claire ended the call. She opened the door but left the chain lock engaged. Through the gap, she could see Adrien's face more clearly. He looked terrible. Hair disheveled, tie loosened, dark circles under his eyes that matched her own. "Claire." His voice was rough. "We need to talk." "No, we don't. I said everything I needed to say last night. Please, just give me 5 minutes." "Why should I?" Adrien's jaw worked like he was chewing on something bitter. "Because I've been up all night thinking about what you said. Because you were right. About all of it. And because I need to explain something to you." Claire studied his face through the gap in the door. She'd spent 3 years learning to read his micro-expressions, and what she saw now wasn't manipulation or anger. It was something closer to desperation. Against her better judgment, she closed the door, unhooked the chain, and opened it again. 5 minutes. That's all you get." Adrien stepped inside, and Claire was suddenly aware of how small her apartment was compared to the penthouse. He seemed to fill the entire space, his presence overwhelming in the tiny living room. She watched him take in the second-hand furniture, the bare walls, the single window with its view of nothing. "This is where you've been living?" There was something in his voice she couldn't quite identify. "This is where I live now. It's mine. That's all that matters." Claire crossed her arms. "You have 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Adrien turned to face her fully. "I found out something last night, after you left. Something that changes everything. Let me guess. Dominic Hale has been sabotaging our marriage for the past 2 years?" The shock on Adrien's face was almost comical. "How did you—" "I got an email last night. Screenshots of conversations between you and Dominic, messages about intercepting my calls, redirecting plans, keeping me out of the way." Claire's voice stayed level despite the anger bubbling underneath. "So you came here to what? Apologize? Explain? Make excuses?" "I didn't know." Adrien's words came out fast. "I swear to you, Claire, I didn't know the extent of what Dominic was doing. But you knew something. Those messages show you approving his actions." Adrien stopped, and for the first time in years, Claire saw him genuinely flounder. I told him to handle things. I told him to keep my work and home life separate. I didn't realize he was using that as permission to destroy our marriage. That's convenient. It's the truth. Adrien took a step closer, and Claire fought the urge to step back. Last night, after you left, I started going through old messages, old emails. I found patterns I'd missed before. Dominic has been controlling information between us for years. Messages you sent that I never received, plans you made that mysteriously fell through. He's been playing us both. Claire laughed without humor. Playing us both? Adrien, those screenshots show you telling him to keep me occupied and out of the way. That's not being played, that's being complicit. I know how it looks. You have 3 minutes left. If you want to use them defending Dominic Hale, that's your choice. Adrien's hands clenched into fists at his sides. I'm not defending him. I fired him. Last night. I went through every communication we've had over the past 5 years, found enough evidence to bury him, and I told him he was done. He's out of my organization, out of my life, and if I find out he's contacted you in any way, I'll make sure he regrets it. This information should have made Claire feel something, vindication maybe, or satisfaction. Instead, she just felt tired. That doesn't change what happened between us. I know, but it explains it. Claire, I thought... Adrien ran a hand through his hair, the gesture making him look younger, more vulnerable. Dominic told me things. About you. He said you were asking questions about my business, that you were getting too curious, that you might be working with the FBI. Claire's blood ran cold. What? He showed me evidence. Fake evidence, I realize now. Photos of you meeting with men I didn't recognize. Transcripts of conversations you supposedly had. He made me believe you were trying to gather information to use against me. Adrien's voice dropped. I thought you were betraying me, so I pulled away. I stopped trusting you. I stopped seeing you as my wife and started seeing you as a threat. The words hung in the air between them like smoke. Claire felt her knees go weak and she sank onto the arm of her couch. You thought I was informing on you to the FBI, she repeated slowly. For how long? 2 years, maybe longer. The evidence started appearing about 6 months into our marriage. Adrien's face was pale. I know how insane that sounds now, but Dominic was my most trusted advisor. I believed him when he said he was protecting me. So instead of asking me directly, instead of confronting me or talking to me like a human being, you just cut me out of your life. Yes. And you saw nothing wrong with that? Adrien's silence was answer enough. Claire stood up, anger finally breaking through her exhaustion. You know what the worst part is? I spent 3 years thinking I'd done something wrong. I analyzed every conversation, every interaction, trying to figure out what I'd said or done to make you stop loving me. I thought I was the problem. I thought if I could just be better, quieter, more understanding, you'd finally see me again. Claire, I blame myself, Adrien. I took responsibility for your neglect, for your coldness, for the death of our marriage, and the whole time you were treating me like an enemy agent. Her voice shook, but didn't break. You trusted Dominic Hale more than you trusted your own wife. I was wrong. You were more than wrong. You were cruel. You let me suffer for years because you were too paranoid and too proud to just ask me the truth. Adrien flinched like she'd slapped him. What can I do? Tell me what to do to fix this. Nothing. There's nothing you can do. Claire moved to the door and opened it. Your 5 minutes are up. I'm not leaving. Then I will. Claire grabbed her purse from the counter. This is my apartment, Adrien, my space. You don't get to commandeer it the way you commandeered everything else in my life. Wait, please. Adrien positioned himself between her and the door. I need to tell you something else. Something you need to know for your own safety. My safety? The person who sent you those screenshots. It wasn't someone trying to help you. It was Dominic. Claire's hand tightened on her purse strap. How do you know that? Because after I fired him last night, he sent me a message. He said he was going to make sure we both understood what happens when people cross him. He said he was going to show you the truth about our marriage, and then he was going to show me the truth about you. What does that mean? I don't know. But Dominic doesn't make idle threats. Adrien's expression was grim. He knows things, Claire, dangerous things, about my organization, about my business dealings, about people who would hurt you just to get to me. And now that he's been cut loose, he has nothing to lose. Claire felt a chill run down her spine, remembering the threatening messages from the night before. Someone texted me, told me I was making a mistake, that I couldn't run from you. Was that him? Probably. He's trying to manipulate you, to scare you into thinking you're not safe without me. Adrien's voice hardened. But I won't let him touch you. I've already assigned security to watch your building. You won't even know they're there, but they'll make sure Dominic stays far away from you. No. The word came out sharp and immediate. No security, no watchers, no guards. Claire, be reasonable. I'm being perfectly reasonable. I left you to get away from being controlled and monitored. I'm not going to let you put me in a gilded cage just because your former employee is making threats. This isn't about control, it's about keeping you safe. It's always about control with you, Adrien. You just dress it up in different words. Claire stepped around him and yanked the door open wider. Get out. Not until you agree to protection. Then we'll stand here all day, because I'm not agreeing to anything. They stared at each other, locked in a battle of wills that felt painfully familiar. Finally, Adrien pulled out his phone and held it up so Claire could see the screen. He dialed a number, and after one ring, a male voice answered. Boss? Marcus, pull the security detail for Mrs. Varella's building. There was a pause. Sir, are you sure that's wise? No, but do it anyway. Adrien ended the call and looked at Claire. There. No security. You're on your own. Good. But if anything happens, if Dominic contacts you, if you see anything suspicious, if you feel threatened in any way, you call me, immediately. I'll call the police. The police can't protect you from someone like Dominic Hale. And you can? Claire shook her head. You couldn't even protect our marriage from him. The words landed like a physical blow. Adrien's face went carefully blank, the mask Claire knew so well sliding back into place. You're right. I couldn't. But I'm trying to do better now. Too little, too late. Adrien moved toward the door, then paused. I'm not signing the divorce papers. You don't have a choice. Sarah will serve you if you don't sign voluntarily. Let her try. Adrien's voice dropped into the dangerous register that made other men flinch. I'm not letting you go, Claire. Not without a fight. Not when I finally understand what I'm losing. You already lost it. You lost it 2 years ago when you believed Dominic over me. You lost it every time you chose your business over your wife. You lost it the moment you stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a problem to be managed. Then let me prove I can be different. Why would I waste my time on that? Adrien's mask cracked, and for just a moment Claire saw raw pain in his eyes. Because I love you. I know I've done a terrible job of showing it, but it's the truth. I love you, Claire. I always have. The words should have meant something. 3 years ago they would have meant everything, but now they just sounded empty. Love isn't enough, Claire said quietly. Love without respect, without trust, without basic human decency is just another prison, and I'm done being your prisoner. She waited until Adrien finally walked out of her apartment, his shoulders rigid with tension. Only after she'd closed and locked the door did she let herself sink to the floor, her back against the wood, her whole body shaking. The tears came then, hot and angry and long overdue. She cried for the marriage she'd thought she had, for the man she'd thought she'd married, for the 3 years she'd lost trying to love someone who saw her as an enemy. She cried until her throat was raw and her eyes burned, and then she got up, washed her face, and called Sarah Chen back. I need you to serve him as soon as possible, Claire said. No more delays, no more chances. I want this done. Consider it handled. Sarah's voice was firm. I'll have the papers delivered to his office this afternoon. And Claire? Document everything, every contact, every message, every attempt he makes to change your mind. It'll all help when this goes to court. After hanging up, Claire made herself breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, simple food that required focus and kept her hands busy. She was halfway through eating when her phone buzzed with an email notification. Another message from an unknown address. No subject line this time. Claire's finger hovered over the delete button, but curiosity won out. She opened it. Inside was a single photograph. It showed Adrien and Dominic Hale sitting in what looked like a restaurant, heads bent close together in conversation. The timestamp in the corner read 3 days ago, the same day Claire had moved out. Below the image was a single line of text. He knew you were leaving. Dominic told him, and they planned how to stop you. Claire stared at the photo, her mind racing. If this was true, it meant Adrien's surprise in his office had been an act. It meant he'd known she was leaving and had still chosen to do nothing until she actually went through with it. But could she trust this source? Dominic was the one sending these messages, trying to manipulate her. This could be another lie, another piece of fake evidence designed to push her further away from Adrien. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Claire answered it against her better judgment. Hello? Mrs. Varela. The voice was smooth, cultured, unfamiliar. I'm glad you finally picked up. Who is this? Someone who wants to help you understand what you're really dealing with. Claire's grip tightened on the phone. Dominic Hale. Very good. I see you've been doing your homework. What do you want? I want to give you the truth. The whole truth, not the sanitized version your husband is trying to sell you. Dominic's voice was almost pleasant, like they were discussing the weather. Adrien told you he didn't know what I was doing. That's a lie. He knew everything. He approved everything. He used me as a buffer so he could pretend his hands were clean. Why should I believe you? Because I have proof, real proof, not just screenshots that could be faked. Financial records showing payments he made to keep you under surveillance. Hotel records showing the nights he told you he was working late, but was actually with other women. Medical records that… Stop. Claire's voice came out strangled. Just stop. I'm offering you the truth, Mrs. Varela. The question is whether you're brave enough to hear it. The question is why you're doing this. Adrien fired you. This is revenge. This is justice. Dominic's pleasant tone hardened. Adrien Varela has spent years building his empire on the backs of people he uses and discards. I helped him become what he is, and the moment I became inconvenient, he threw me away like garbage. I'm simply returning the favor. By dragging me into your vendetta? By showing you who your husband really is, by giving you the ammunition you need to destroy him the way he deserves to be destroyed. Claire's hand was shaking so badly she had to press the phone hard against her ear to keep it steady. I don't want to destroy him, I just want to leave. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive. Dominic paused. Meet with me. One conversation face to face. I'll show you everything I have, and then you can decide what to do with it. If you still want to just walk away quietly after that, fine. But at least you'll know the truth. No. You're making a mistake. That's my choice to make. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, you're still dancing to Adrien's tune. He tells you I'm the villain, and you believe him. He tells you he didn't know, and you want to believe him. He's manipulating you even now, and you can't see it because you're still in love with the man you thought he was. The words hit too close to home. Claire forced herself to take a breath. Don't contact me again. I'll send you an address. You can decide whether or not to show up. But Claire? Dominic's voice dropped. Whatever you decide, watch your back. Adrien doesn't let go of what he considers his property, and he's considered you his property since the day you said, I do. The line went dead. Claire sat in her kitchen, her breakfast forgotten, her mind spinning. She didn't trust Dominic. She couldn't trust Dominic, but she also couldn't ignore the possibility that he was telling at least some version of the truth. Her phone buzzed. A text from yet another unknown number, this one containing only an address in the warehouse district and a time, 8 p.m. tonight. Claire deleted the message but couldn't delete the knowledge of it from her mind. She spent the day trying to distract herself. She unpacked more boxes, arranged her small collection of books on a shelf, tried to read. But her thoughts kept circling back to the same questions. How much had Adrien really known? How much had been Dominic's independent manipulation versus conspiracy between them? And if Adrien really loved her, why had it taken her walking out for him to finally fight for their marriage? By 7 o'clock, Claire had made a decision. She wasn't going to meet Dominic. That was too dangerous, too much of a risk. But she also wasn't going to just sit in her apartment wondering what he knew. She called Sarah Chen. I need you to hire a private investigator. Someone good, someone discreet. I want to know everything about Dominic Hale, his finances, his connections, his movements over the past 5 years. Claire's voice was steady. And I want to know the truth about Adrien. No more taking anyone's word for anything. I want facts. That's going to be expensive. I don't care, I have money saved. I'll pay whatever it costs. All right, I know someone. Former FBI, now does private work for high-profile divorces. I'll reach out to him tonight. Sarah paused. Claire, are you sure about this? Once you start digging into Adrien's world, there's no going back. You might find things you wish you didn't know. I already found things I wish I didn't know. At this point, I'd rather have all the ugly truth than live with comfortable lies. After hanging up, Claire made herself dinner and tried to pretend it was a normal evening. She put on music, cooked pasta, poured herself a glass of wine she didn't drink, and all the while she watched the clock tick toward 8 p.m. At 7:45, her phone rang. Adrien. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. What? Where are you? Adrien's voice was tight. At my apartment. Where else would I be? Dominic contacted you, didn't he? He asked you to meet him somewhere. Claire's blood ran cold. How did you know that? Because he sent me a message too. He said he was going to show you the truth about me and that after tonight you'd never look at me the same way again. Adrien's breathing was audible over the line. Tell me you're not going to meet him. Tell me you're not that foolish. I wasn't planning on it. Good. Because it's a trap, Claire. Whatever he promised to show you, whatever evidence he claims to have, it's designed to lure you into a vulnerable position. Dominic is dangerous when he's been backed into a corner. You're the one who backed him into that corner. I know, and I'll deal with the consequences, but I won't let him use you to get to me. Adrien's voice softened slightly. Please, just stay home tonight. Lock your doors. Don't open them for anyone except the police. I already told you I'm not your prisoner anymore. This isn't about control. This is about the fact that Dominic Hale is a sociopath who's convinced himself that destroying our marriage is some kind of noble cause. Adrien paused. I'm coming over. No, you're not. I'm already in my car. Adrien, I swear, if you show up at my door, you'll what? Call the police? Fine, call them. But I'm not leaving you alone tonight, not when Dominic is out there making threats. Claire wanted to argue, wanted to assert her independence, wanted to prove she didn't need Adrien's protection. But underneath the anger and resentment was a thread of genuine fear. She'd heard enough stories about Adrien's world to know that men like Dominic Hale didn't make idle threats. You can park outside if you want, she said finally. But you're not coming into my apartment. Fine. 30 minutes later, Claire looked out her window and saw Adrien's car parked across the street. She could just make out his silhouette in the driver's seat, phone in hand, clearly settling in for a long night. Part of her wanted to go down and yell at him, to demand he leave. But another part, a part she didn't want to examine too closely, felt safer knowing he was there. At 8:15, her phone buzzed. A message from the number Dominic had used earlier. I waited. You didn't show. Disappointing, but not surprising. You're still too afraid to face the truth. When you're ready to be brave, you know how to find me. Claire blocked the number and closed her curtains. Then she curled up on her couch with her phone in one hand and the kitchen knife she'd grabbed in the other, feeling ridiculous and terrified in equal measure. She didn't sleep that night. Every sound in the hallway made her jump. Every car door that slammed outside made her heart race. And every time she looked out the window, Adrien's car was still there, a dark sentinel keeping watch. By the time dawn broke, Claire had made another decision. She was done reacting to other people's games. It was time to take control of her own story, to find her own truth instead of relying on what Adrien or Dominic or anyone else told her. She was going to hire that private investigator. She was going to dig into every aspect of her marriage, no matter how ugly it got. And she was going to make sure that when this divorce was finalized, she walked away knowing exactly who Adrien Varela was. Not the man she'd fallen in love with, not the man he pretended to be, but the real person underneath all the lies. At 7 in the morning, Adrien's car was gone, but there was a note slipped under her door. I'll be at the Harper Hotel, room 1215, for the next few days. If you need anything, if you change your mind about security, if Dominic contacts you again, if you just want to talk, I'll be there. I'm not giving up on us. I hope someday you'll understand why. Claire crumpled the note in her fist. Then she smoothed it out and tucked it into a drawer, unable to throw it away despite everything. Her phone rang. Sarah Chen. I found you an investigator. His name is James Rivera, former FBI, now specializes in high-stakes divorce cases. He can start immediately, but he needs to meet with you first to understand exactly what you're looking for. Set it up. as soon as possible. There's one more thing. The divorce papers were served to Adrien yesterday afternoon. His attorney called this morning. Adrien is refusing to sign, and he's filed a motion to contest the divorce on grounds of reconciliation possibility. Claire closed her eyes. Of course he had. What does that mean? It means this is going to get messy. He's going to fight you every step of the way. Are you prepared for that? Was she? Claire thought about the past 3 years, about the loneliness and the confusion and the slow erosion of her self-worth. She thought about the screenshots Dominic had sent, about Adrien's admission that he thought she was betraying him, about the note under her door promising he wouldn't give up. Yes, she said finally. I'm prepared. Let's do this. James Rivera arrived at Claire's apartment 3 days later, carrying a leather messenger bag and the kind of careful neutrality that came from years of FBI training. He was in his early 50s, with gray threading through his dark hair and eyes that seemed to catalog everything they saw. Claire had spent those 3 days jumping at shadows, screening every call, and watching the street below her window for signs of Dominic Hale or Adrien's car. Neither had appeared, but the silence felt more ominous than comforting. Mrs. Varela. James extended his hand as Claire led him into her apartment. His grip was firm but not aggressive. Thank you for meeting with me. It's just Claire now, or it will be soon. She gestured to the small kitchen table where she'd laid out copies of everything, the divorce papers, the screenshots from Dominic, Adrien's note, records of the threatening messages. Can I get you coffee? Black, if you have it. They sat across from each other, and James spent several minutes reviewing the documents without speaking. Claire watched him work, noticed the way his expression remained carefully blank, even as he read messages that had made her cry. When he finally looked up, his eyes were thoughtful. This is quite a situation you found yourself in. That's one way to put it. Before we go any further, I need to be clear about something. My investigation will uncover the truth, whatever that truth is. Sometimes my clients don't like what I find. Sometimes it's worse than they imagine. Sometimes it's better, but it's always honest. James leaned back in his chair. If I take this case, I'm going to dig into your husband's business, his personal life, his financial records, his communications. And I'm going to dig into Dominic Hale's claims. Some of what I find might hurt you. Are you prepared for that? Claire thought about the question. Was she prepared to learn that Adrien had been unfaithful? That he'd lied about more than just trusting Dominic's manipulations? That their entire marriage had been built on foundations even shakier than she'd realized? I'm more prepared for the truth than I am for living with questions, she said finally. James nodded like she'd passed some kind of test. All right then. Let's start with what you want to know. Give me your questions and I'll tell you what I can and can't find answers to. Claire had been preparing this list in her head for days. I want to know how much Adrien knew about what Dominic was doing. I want to know if there's any truth to Dominic's claims about other women. I want to know what Adrien's business really is, not the corporate facade, but what he actually does. And I want to know why Dominic is so determined to destroy both of us. Those are big questions. The answers won't come cheap. I don't care about the cost, I care about the truth. James pulled out a tablet and started taking notes. I'll need access to any financial records you have, any passwords to shared accounts, any documentation about your marriage. I'll also need you to write down everything you remember about the past 3 years, significant events, strange occurrences, times when things didn't add up. The more detail you can give me, the better. They spent the next hour going through Claire's memories, with James asking pointed questions that forced her to examine moments she'd tried to forget. He wanted to know about Adrien's travel patterns, his associates, the people who called the penthouse at odd hours. He wanted to know about the times Adrien had come home injured and claimed it was nothing, about the nights he'd disappeared entirely, about the conversations that had ended abruptly when Claire walked into the room. By the time James left, Claire felt wrung out and slightly sick. Reliving 3 years of her marriage in clinical detail had been like performing surgery on herself without anesthesia. But when James promised to have preliminary findings within a week, she felt something that might have been hope stirring in her chest. She was making her own moves now, taking control of her own story. That afternoon, Sarah Chen called with an update on the divorce proceedings. Adrien's attorney is playing hardball. They're requesting a 6-month reconciliation period before any divorce can be finalized. They're claiming that recent discoveries about third-party interference in the marriage constitute grounds for attempting to repair the relationship before legally dissolving it. Claire's grip tightened on her phone. That's insane. I don't want to reconcile. I want a divorce. I know, but Adrien's team is good, and they're arguing that you can't make a fully informed decision about ending your marriage until you've attempted to rebuild it without Dominic's interference. It's a creative argument, I'll give them that. Can they actually force me to stay married to him for 6 more months? Not force, exactly, but they can drag out the proceedings significantly if we don't find a way to counter their argument. Sarah paused. There is one option. If we can prove that Adrien's behavior during the marriage was harmful beyond just Dominic's manipulation, if we can show a pattern of emotional abuse, control, or other actionable behavior, we can push for an expedited divorce on those grounds. So we need to prove he was abusive. Not in the traditional sense, but emotional neglect, deliberate isolation, control of finances or movement, those all count. Did Adrien ever prevent you from seeing friends, control your access to money, monitor your communications? Claire thought back. He gave me credit cards, but never let me see the actual bank accounts. He said it was for security reasons. And most of my friends from before we got married, they sort of faded away. I always thought that was natural when you get married, but now I wonder if he discouraged those relationships. That's a start. Write down everything you can remember. Specific instances, specific conversations. I need concrete examples, not general feelings. After hanging up, Claire opened her laptop and started writing. She began with the easy things, the way Adrien had slowly taken over all their financial decisions, the way he'd insisted she quit her job as a museum curator because it was beneath her station as his wife, the way he'd suggested she didn't need her own car because his driver could take her anywhere she needed to go. But as she wrote, harder memories surfaced. The time she'd wanted to visit her sister in Seattle and Adrien had said it wasn't safe for her to travel alone. Then had been too busy to accompany her, so the trip never happened. The way he'd always checked her phone when she set it down, claiming he was just making sure she hadn't received any threats. The gradual shrinking of her world until it consisted of just the penthouse, Adrien's occasional presence, and the growing certainty that she was somehow failing at being the wife he needed. She was still writing when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Claire's heart jumped, expecting another message from Dominic. But the text was short and businesslike. Mrs. Varela, this is Marcus Chen, Mr. Varela's head of security. Despite his instructions to give you space, I felt you should know that Dominic Hale has been making inquiries about your schedule and movements. Please be vigilant. If you see anything suspicious, call this number immediately. Claire stared at the message. Marcus had always been professional but distant during her marriage, one of Adrien's many employees who treated her with polite indifference. Why would he reach out now, against Adrien's orders? She texted back, "What kind of inquiries?" The response came quickly. "He's been asking my former colleagues about security gaps in your building, about your routine, about whether you have protection. I don't trust his intentions." Does Adrien know you're telling me this? No. But some things are more important than following orders. Be careful, Mrs. Varela. Claire saved the number and tried to return to her writing, but her concentration was broken. She kept looking at her apartment door, checking the locks, peering out the window at the street below. The afternoon stretched into evening, and with each passing hour, her anxiety ratcheted higher. At 8 p.m., her doorbell rang. Claire froze, her hand instinctively reaching for her phone. Through the peephole, she saw a young woman in a delivery uniform holding a large envelope. "Delivery for Claire Whitmore," the woman called through the door. Claire had started using her maiden name again, but only Sarah and James knew that. She opened the door with the chain still engaged. "I didn't order anything. It's from a law office. I need you to sign for it." The delivery woman held up a clipboard. "Legal documents." Claire's stomach sank as she signed and accepted the envelope. Inside was a motion from Adrien's attorneys, formally requesting the 6-month reconciliation period and outlining in excruciating legal detail why their marriage deserved a second chance now that the interfering third party had been removed. The motion included character witnesses, people Claire barely knew, who would apparently testify to Adrien's devotion and her apparent happiness during their marriage. It included financial documentation showing how well Adrien had provided for her. It even included a letter from Adrien himself, addressed to the court, explaining his failures and his commitment to doing better. Claire read the letter twice, her emotions warring between fury and something dangerously close to sympathy. Adrien's words were careful and measured, admitting his mistakes without fully accepting blame, expressing love without promising specific changes. It was a masterpiece of saying everything while committing to nothing. She was composing an angry text to Sarah when her phone rang. Not a number she recognized, but not blocked either. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Hello?" "Claire. Finally." The voice was female, young, nervous. "My name is Rachel Kemper. I need to talk to you about Adrien Varela." Claire's heart started pounding. "Who are you?" "I worked at one of Adrien's properties, the Harper Hotel. I'm a concierge there." Rachel's words came fast, tumbling over each other. "I saw your name in the news about the divorce filing, and I thought you should know. You're not the first." "The first what?" "The first wife to try to leave him. There was another woman before you. Her name was Elena Cortez. She was married to Adrien for almost a year before their divorce was finalized." Claire felt the floor drop out from under her. "Adrien was married before me?" "Yes. And I helped Elena sometimes when she stayed at the hotel to get away from him. She told me things about how controlling he was, how he monitored everything she did, how he made her feel like she was crazy for wanting basic freedom." Rachel's voice dropped. "She said she tried to leave several times, but he always found a way to pull her back. It took her 2 years to finally get free of him." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I saw him at the hotel yesterday. He's staying in one of our suites, and he's been meeting with lawyers and private investigators and people who look like they could break someone in half without trying. And when I heard he was fighting your divorce, I remembered Elena. I remembered how desperate she was to get away from him." Rachel paused. "I don't know you, Mrs. Varela, but I thought you deserved to know what you might be up against. Do you know where Elena is now? Can I talk to her?" "She moved to Portland after the divorce, started over with a new name. She made me promise never to tell anyone where she went because she was that afraid Adrien would come after her." Rachel hesitated. "But I can give you her email address. Maybe she'll be willing to talk to you. Maybe your situation is different enough that she'll want to help." Claire grabbed a pen and wrote down the email address Rachel recited. After hanging up, she sat in her kitchen, staring at the information in her hand. Adrien had been married before. He'd never mentioned it, never even hinted at it. 3 years together, and he'd kept an entire previous marriage secret. She opened her laptop and typed out an email to Elena Cortez, then deleted it and started over 3 times before finally settling on something simple and honest. "My name is Claire. I'm currently trying to divorce Adrien Varela. I heard you were married to him once. If you're willing to talk, I'd appreciate any insight you could share about what I might be facing. I understand if you'd rather not respond. I just wanted to reach out." She hit send before she could second-guess herself. That night, Claire dreamed of locked doors and long hallways, of running and never moving, of Adrien's face shifting between concern and cold calculation. She woke at 3 a.m. gasping for air, her sheets soaked with sweat, her heart racing like she'd actually been running. When she checked her email at dawn, there was a response from Elena Cortez. Just 3 words: "Call me. Urgent." A phone number followed. Claire's hands shook as she dialed. The phone rang 4 times before a woman answered, her voice rough with sleep and something that might have been fear. "Is this Claire?" "Yes." "Thank you for responding. I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't." Elena's voice hardened. "I spent 3 years pretending Adrien Varela didn't exist, pretending I'd never made the mistake of marrying him. But when I got your email, I couldn't just ignore it. Not when I know what you're going through." "Rachel said you were married to him for a year." "Legally, yes. But he controlled my life for almost 3 years total. 1 year of marriage and 2 years of him fighting the divorce. Showing up at my work, sending people to check on me, making me feel like I'd never be free of him." Elena's words were bitter. "I finally had to disappear completely. New city, new name, new life. And even now, 5 years later, I still look over my shoulder." "Why didn't you go to the police?" "And tell them what? That my estranged husband was sending flowers to my office? That his employees kept accidentally running into me at coffee shops? That I felt like I was being watched even though I could never prove it?" Elena laughed without humor. "Adrien is too smart to do anything overtly illegal. He operates in this gray area where everything he does is technically legal, but adds up to psychological torture. Claire's throat felt tight. Did he ever hurt you, physically? No, never. He didn't have to. He hurt me in ways that don't leave bruises. Elena paused. Claire, why did you really call? What do you need from me? I need to know if there's a way to win against him. If there's a way to actually get free. There is. But it requires you to be willing to burn everything down. Every bridge, every connection, every part of your old life. Adrien can't control you if you're willing to walk away from everything he might use as leverage. I don't have much left to walk away from. He already took most of it. Then you have an advantage I didn't. When I tried to leave, I was still trying to salvage my career, my reputation, my relationships. Adrien used all of it against me. He called my employer and expressed concern about my mental health. He told my friends I was having a breakdown. He positioned himself as the worried husband trying to help his unstable wife. Elena's voice shook slightly. By the time I realized what he was doing, half my life had been poisoned against me. How did you finally get free? I stopped caring what anyone thought. I accepted that I'd have to start completely over. And I documented everything, every call, every encounter, every manipulation. When I finally went back to court, I had a paper trail a mile long showing a pattern of harassment. The judge granted the divorce and issued a restraining order. Claire was taking mental notes of everything Elena said. Did the restraining order work? For about 6 months. Then one day it just stopped. The watching, the contacts, all of it. It was like Adrien just decided I wasn't worth the effort anymore. Elena paused. I heard later that he'd gotten remarried. To you, I assume. We got married 5 years ago. Then he moved on quickly after giving up on me. That should tell you something about how he views relationships. We're interchangeable to him. Possessions that lose their appeal once they stop being controllable. The words stung because they resonated with something Claire had been trying not to acknowledge. Do you think he ever really loved you? Elena was quiet for a long moment. I think Adrien loves the idea of having someone who belongs to him. I think he loves control and power and winning. But actual love? The kind that requires seeing another person as an equal, respecting their autonomy, wanting their happiness even when it conflicts with your own desires? She sighed. I don't think he's capable of that, and I don't think he'll ever admit it, even to himself. They talked for another 20 minutes, with Elena sharing specific examples of Adrien's manipulation tactics and the strategies that had finally worked to get free of him. By the time Claire hung up, she felt simultaneously more informed and more terrified. Elena's experience was a roadmap of what to avoid, but it was also a preview of just how hard Adrien would fight to maintain control. The next morning, Claire received an email from James Rivera. The subject line read simply, Initial Findings. She opened it with trembling hands. The email was brief. I've completed the first phase of investigation. We need to meet in person to discuss what I've found. This is not information you want to receive via email. Are you available this afternoon? They met at a coffee shop 3 blocks from Claire's apartment. James was already there when she arrived, sitting in a corner booth with his tablet and a thick folder in front of him. His expression was carefully neutral, which Claire had learned meant he'd found something significant. Thank you for meeting me so quickly, she said as she slid into the booth across from him. After reviewing what I found, I didn't want to wait. James opened the folder and turned it so Claire could see the first page. It was a financial record showing transfers between multiple accounts. Let's start with the money. During your marriage, Adrien moved approximately $12 million through various accounts in your name. You were listed as the account holder, but you never had access to the passwords or statements. Claire's head spun. $12 million? Money laundering, most likely. If his business dealings were ever investigated, the paper trail would lead back to you, not him. You'd be the one facing criminal charges. James flipped to the next page. He also took out several life insurance policies on you, totaling $5 million. The policies were dated within 6 months of your marriage. Life insurance policies? With him as the sole beneficiary. Standard practice for wealthy couples, except... James hesitated. The policies include accidental death clauses with double indemnity. If you died in an accident, he'd receive $10 million. Claire felt sick. Are you saying, but I'm not saying anything definitive, but it's suspicious timing and suspicious amounts, especially combined with what else I found. James pulled out another document. This is more interesting. About 2 years into your marriage, Adrien hired a private security firm to conduct a threat assessment on you. A threat assessment? Against me. That's what it looks like. The report concludes that you pose no security risk to Adrien's organization, but the fact that he commissioned it at all suggests he believed you might be a threat, or someone convinced him you were. Dominic? Claire breathed. Possibly. I'm still working on tracking Dominic Hale's communications and movements during that period. But here's where it gets really interesting. James pulled up something on his tablet. I found encrypted communications between Adrien and a contact saved only as DH in his phone records. The encryption has been broken. Don't ask me how. You don't want to know. And the messages confirm that Dominic was feeding Adrien false information about you for at least 18 months. False information about what? Everything. Your whereabouts when Adrien thought you were home. Your purchases, which Dominic inflated to make you seem wasteful. Your communications, which Dominic claimed included contact with federal investigators. James looked up from the tablet. But here's the thing, Claire. Adrien questioned some of it. There are messages where he asks for proof, where he expresses doubt about Dominic's claims, and Dominic provided manufactured evidence each time. So Adrien was manipulated. Yes and no. He was lied to, certainly, but he also chose to believe those lies over trusting you. He chose to investigate his own wife rather than confront you directly about his concerns. And he chose to pull away from the marriage based on suspicions rather than facts. James's expression was sympathetic but honest. He's both a victim and a perpetrator here. The question is, which role matters more to you? Claire stared at the documents spread across the table, trying to process everything. What about Dominic's claims? About other women? I haven't found evidence of infidelity yet, but I'm still looking. James closed the folder. I did find something else, though. Dominic Hale has significant gambling debts, over $2 million to some very dangerous people. He's been embezzling from Adrien's organization for at least a year, probably longer. Adrien fired him before discovering the full extent of the theft. So Dominic's revenge is about more than just being fired. It's about survival. If Adrien exposes the embezzlement, Dominic goes to prison. But if Dominic can destroy Adrien's credibility, his marriage, his business relationships, maybe he buys himself enough time to disappear with whatever money he's stolen. James paused. The threatening messages you received? Those weren't about helping you or warning you. They were about creating chaos. The more conflict between you and Adrien, the more distracted Adrien is from discovering what Dominic's really been doing. Claire felt like she was seeing the whole picture for the first time, and it was uglier than she'd imagined. We're both just pieces in whatever game Dominic is playing. That's one way to look at it, but here's another perspective. You have information now that Adrien doesn't have. You know about the embezzlement. You know about Dominic's debts. You know about the manufactured evidence. James leaned forward. The question is what you want to do with that information. What do you mean? You could share it with Adrien. Tell him what I've found. Help him build a case against Dominic, maybe even save his organization from whatever damage Dominic is planning. James's voice was carefully neutral. Or you could keep it to yourself, use it as leverage in your divorce, and let Adrien deal with Dominic on his own. Claire opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, her phone started ringing. Adrien's name flashed on the screen. She stared at it, James's question hanging in the air between them. After 4 rings, she answered. What? Claire, I need to see you. Now. Something's happened. Adrien's voice was tight with an emotion she couldn't identify. Please. It's important. I'm busy. This can't wait. It's about Dominic. Adrien cut himself off. I can't explain over the phone. Can you meet me? Somewhere public if you want. The coffee shop on 5th Street. Please, Claire. This affects you too. Claire looked at James, who was watching her with those careful, assessing eyes. She thought about Elena's warnings, about the documents spread across the table, about the choice she was about to make. 1 hour, she said finally, and I'm bringing someone with me. Fine, just come. After hanging up, Claire turned to James. Want to meet my husband? James smiled slightly. I thought you'd never ask. They arrived at the coffee shop to find Adrien already there. sitting at a table in the back corner. He looked worse than Claire had ever seen him, suit wrinkled, hair disheveled, eyes red-rimmed like he hadn't slept. He stood when he saw her, then registered James behind her, and his expression closed off slightly. "Who's this?" "James Rivera, private investigator. He's been looking into our marriage." Claire sat down without waiting for an invitation. "Whatever you want to tell me, you can say in front of him." Adrien's jaw clenched, but he sat back down. "Fine. Dominic is gone. He's disappeared, cleaned out his office, wiped his communications, and vanished. But before he left, he planted evidence suggesting that I've been running illegal operations through your name. Financial crimes, money laundering, fraud. If the feds investigate, they'll come after you first." Claire exchanged a look with James, who gave a subtle nod. "We know," Claire said, "about the accounts in my name, the policies, all of it." Adrien's eyes widened. "You know?" "I told you I hired an investigator. Did you think I'd just take your word for what was happening in my own marriage?" Claire's voice was steady despite her racing heart. "The question is, what are you going to do about it? Because those accounts exist. That evidence exists. And unless you clean it up, I could go to prison for crimes you committed." "I'm already working on it. My attorneys are dismantling everything Dominic set up, moving the money, closing the accounts. I'll make sure nothing traces back to you." "How generous, fixing the problem you created." "I didn't create this. Dominic did." "You let him." Claire leaned forward. "You gave him access to our finances, to our lives, to our marriage. You trusted him more than you trusted me. So yes, Adrien, you created this. Maybe not intentionally, but you still created it." Adrien's face flushed. "I'm trying to protect you. Now. You're trying to protect me now. Where was this protective instinct 2 years ago when you believed I was betraying you? Where was it when I was sitting alone in restaurants waiting for a husband who never showed up? I was wrong. I've admitted that. Admitting you were wrong and actually making amends are two different things." Claire pulled out her phone and opened the email from Elena. "Tell me about your first wife." The color drained from Adrien's face. "What?" "Elena Cortez. You were married to her before me. Why didn't you ever mention that?" Adrien's hands clenched into fists on the table. "That's none of your business." "It's absolutely my business. She told me what you put her through, the stalking, the manipulation, the way you made her feel crazy for wanting basic autonomy." Claire's voice rose slightly. "She told me she had to completely disappear to get away from you. Is that what you're planning to make me do?" "Elena was different. How? How was she different? Or was she just the first woman who realized what you really are?" Adrien stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Several other patrons looked over. "I'm not having this conversation with an audience." "Then leave. I'm not stopping you." But Adrien didn't leave. He sank back into his chair and pressed his palms against his eyes. When he finally looked up, there was something raw in his expression that Claire had never seen before. "Elena left me because I couldn't tell her the truth about my business. She wanted transparency I couldn't give her, so I tried to control the situation instead, and she was right to leave. I learned from that. I thought with you, if I kept you separate from my work, if I protected you from the ugly parts of my life, things would be different. So you learned the wrong lesson. Instead of being honest, you just got better at hiding things. I was trying to keep you safe. I didn't want to be safe. I wanted to be your partner, your equal, your wife, not your prisoner." Claire felt tears threatening but forced them back. "But you never saw me that way, did you? I was just another thing to control, to protect, to manage." "That's not true." James, who'd been silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke. "Mr. Varela, I'm going to share something with you. In my 20 years investigating marital cases, I've seen patterns. Men who genuinely want to repair their marriages approach reconciliation differently than men who want to maintain control. They offer transparency, they accept accountability, they make concrete changes in behavior rather than just promises to do better." He paused. "Everything you've done so far, fighting the divorce, moving assets around, trying to manage the fallout from Dominic's actions, follows the pattern of a man trying to control a situation, not repair a relationship." Adrien's expression hardened. "You don't know anything about me or my marriage. I know what the evidence shows, and the evidence shows a man who uses protection and provision as substitutes for actual intimacy and partnership." James pulled out one of the documents from his folder. "I also know about the embezzlement. Dominic Hale has been stealing from you for at least a year, over $2 million that we can trace so far. The shock on Adrien's face was genuine. What? He has gambling debts, dangerous people hunting him. He needed money, and he took it from you. That's why he's disappeared. James slid the document across the table. It's also why he was so desperate to keep you focused on your marriage problems instead of your business operations. The more chaos in your personal life, the less attention you paid to what he was doing. Adrien grabbed the document, his eyes scanning the numbers and dates. His expression shifted from shock to fury to something that looked almost like fear. This can't be right. This amount would mean he's been stealing since about 6 months into Claire's marriage to you. Right around the time he started feeding you false information about her. James leaned back. Makes you wonder if that was part of the plan all along. Keep you paranoid about your wife, keep you distracted, and rob you blind while you're not paying attention. Adrien's hands were shaking as he set the document down. He looked at Claire, and for the first time she could remember, he looked lost. I've been played. By someone I trusted more than anyone except... He stopped himself. Except me? Claire finished. No, Adrien. You trusted Dominic more than me. That's the whole problem. They sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of everything that had been said hanging heavy in the air. Other conversations hummed around them, normal people having normal problems, completely unaware of the implosion happening at their corner table. Finally, Adrien spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. What do you want from me, Claire? Tell me what you want, and I'll do it. It was the question she'd been waiting 3 years to hear, and now that it was finally being asked, she realized she didn't have a simple answer. I want you to sign the divorce papers. I want you to drop the reconciliation motion, and I want you to fix the financial mess you created so I don't spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder for federal investigators. Claire paused. But more than any of that, I want you to admit the truth. Not the sanitized version where Dominic is the villain and you're the victim. The real truth. What truth? That you never trusted me. That you married me but kept me at arm's length because you couldn't risk letting someone actually know you. That you've been running from real intimacy your entire adult life. And Elena and I are just casualties of that fear. Claire's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking under the table. Admit that, and maybe we can both move forward. Keep lying to yourself and we'll both be stuck in this pattern forever. Adrien's face went through several emotions too quickly for her to track. Then he did something that shocked her more than anything else that day. He started crying. Not dramatic sobs, just silent tears tracking down his face while he stared at the table. James looked away, giving them a moment of privacy despite being right there. You're right, Adrien said finally, his voice thick. About all of it. I've spent so long building walls and protecting myself that I forgot how to actually let someone in. Elena tried to tell me that. You tried to tell me that. But I couldn't hear it because hearing it would mean admitting that I'm... He stopped, struggling with the words. Scared? Claire offered quietly. Terrified. Of being vulnerable. Of giving someone power over me. Of loving someone enough that losing them would destroy me. Adrien wiped his face roughly. So I controlled everything instead, kept everyone at a distance, and convinced myself that was the same thing as keeping people safe. It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to her. Claire felt something crack in her chest, a tiny fissure in the armor she'd built around her heart. Thank you, she said, for finally telling me the truth. Adrien looked up at her, hope flickering in his eyes. Does that change anything? Claire thought about the question. Did it change anything? Knowing that Adrien's failures came from fear rather than malice, that he was damaged rather than simply cruel, that somewhere under all the control and manipulation was a person who genuinely loved her but hadn't known how to show it? It changes how I understand what happened between us, she said carefully. It doesn't change the fact that I can't live like that anymore. I can't be with someone who sees love as a weakness to guard against rather than a strength to build on. I can change. I want to change. Maybe you do. But change takes time, Adrien. Real change takes years, not weeks or months. And I can't put my life on hold while you figure out how to be the person you should have been all along. So you won't even give me a chance? I've been giving you chances for 3 years. Every time I tried to connect with you, every time I reached out, every time I swallowed my hurt and tried again, those were all chances. And you didn't take them because you weren't ready. Now I'm not ready to keep waiting. Adrien's shoulders slumped in defeat. James cleared his throat gently. Mr. Varela, there's one more thing you should know. Dominic isn't just running from his debts. He's been in contact with several federal agencies, offering to provide information about your business operations in exchange for immunity. James pulled out his phone and showed Adrien a series of emails. He's willing to bury you to save himself. The color drained from Adrien's face again as he read the emails. When was this? The first contact was 3 weeks ago, before Claire even filed for divorce. He's been planning this for a while. Adrien handed the phone back, his expression grim. Then I don't have time to wait. I need to get ahead of this, talk to my attorneys, figure out what Dominic knows and what he can actually prove. He stopped and looked at Claire. I need to let you go so I can deal with this. It wasn't what she'd expected him to say. What? I have to fight Dominic, fight whatever he's planning, protect my organization, probably spend the next year buried in legal proceedings and damage control. And I can't do that while I'm also trying to prove to you that I can be different. Adrien's voice was flat, defeated. You deserve better than someone who's only half present in the relationship. You've already lived that life. I'm not putting you through it again. So you'll sign the papers? I'll sign the papers. I'll drop the reconciliation motion. I'll fix the financial situation, and I'll let you go. He paused. But I want you to know something. I do love you, Claire. I probably did a terrible job of showing it, but it's true. And if I ever become the man who deserves someone like you, someone who can actually be a partner instead of a prison guard, I'll find you and tell you that. But until then, you're right. You should be free. Claire felt tears stinging her eyes despite everything. This was what she wanted, wasn't it? Freedom, the divorce, her life back. So why did it hurt so much to hear him finally agree to give it to her? Thank you, she managed. Adrien stood, straightened his tie in an old habit, and looked at James. Send me your final bill. I'll pay for the investigation. That won't be necessary. Mrs. Varela hired me. Then send it to her and copy me. I'll still pay it. It's the least I can do. Adrien looked back at Claire one last time. Goodbye, Claire. I hope you find someone who deserves you. He walked out of the coffee shop without looking back, leaving Claire and James sitting at the table surrounded by documents that told the story of a marriage that had died long before anyone signed the death certificate. Claire waited until she was sure Adrien was gone before letting the tears come. James pushed a napkin across the table and didn't say anything, just waited while she cried for the marriage she'd wanted, the man she'd hoped Adrien could be, and the 3 years she'd lost trying to love someone who didn't know how to love her back. When she finally composed herself, James gathered up the documents and put them back in his folder. What happens now? Claire asked. Now you wait for the paperwork to be finalized. Now you start rebuilding your life. Now you remember that you're stronger than you thought you were when you first walked into his office with those divorce papers. James smiled slightly. And now you let yourself heal. Claire nodded, wiping her eyes. Can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think he meant it? About changing? James considered the question carefully. I think he believes he did. I think in that moment he genuinely wanted to be better. Whether he actually follows through when the emotion fades and the reality sets in, that's harder to predict. People like Adrien have spent their whole lives building defense mechanisms. Dismantling those takes more than just wanting to. It takes commitment and work and probably therapy. So probably not. Probably not without serious intervention, but that's not your problem anymore. James stood and offered her his hand. Come on, let me walk you home. They walked back to Claire's apartment in comfortable silence. When they reached her building, James handed her his card. If you need anything else, if Dominic resurfaces, if Adrien changes his mind about the divorce, if you just need someone to verify that you're not crazy and this really was as messed up as it feels, call me. Thank you for everything. You did the hard part. I just found the evidence. James turned to leave, then stopped. Claire, you're going to be okay. It might not feel like it right now, but you're going to be more than okay. You're going to be free. Claire watched him walk away, then climbed the stairs to her small apartment. Inside, everything looked exactly as she'd left it. Her second-hand furniture, her bare walls, her single window with its view of nothing special. It looked like freedom. She made herself tea and curled up on her couch with her phone. There was a text from Sarah. Adrien's attorney just called. He's withdrawing all motions and agreeing to all our terms. Whatever you said to him, it worked. I'll have the final papers drawn up by end of week. Claire stared at the message. It was really happening. The divorce would be finalized. She would be free. She'd won. So why did winning feel so much like losing? Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was an email from an address she didn't recognize. The subject line made her blood run cold. One last warning. She opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a single photograph showing Adrien leaving the coffee shop, his face tear-stained and destroyed. Below it was a message. You broke him. Now it's my turn to break you. This isn't over, Claire. It's just beginning. DH. Claire's hands were shaking so badly she nearly dropped the phone. Dominic hadn't disappeared. He was still out there, still watching, still playing whatever sick game he'd started. And now he was coming for her. Claire's first instinct was to call Adrien. Her finger hovered over his number for a full minute before she stopped herself. No. This was exactly what Dominic wanted, to send her running back to Adrien for protection, to make her dependent again, to prove she couldn't survive without her husband's empire wrapped around her like armor. She'd spent 3 years being afraid, and she was done with fear making her decisions. Instead, she screenshot the email, forwarded it to James Rivera and Sarah Chen, and then called the one person she'd been avoiding since this whole nightmare began. Her sister answered on the third ring. Claire? Is that really you? Hi, Meg. Claire's voice cracked slightly on the name. I know it's been a while. A while? Try 3 years. I wasn't even sure you still had my number. Meg's voice held hurt and confusion in equal measure. What's going on? Are you okay? No, I'm not okay, and I need help. The words unlocked something in Claire's chest. She told Meg everything. The divorce, the manipulation, Dominic's threats, Adrien's breakdown at the coffee shop. It all poured out in a rush of words that left her breathless and shaking. Meg listened without interrupting, and when Claire finally ran out of words, her sister's response was immediate and fierce. Pack a bag. I'm booking you a flight to Seattle. You're staying with me until this blows over. I can't run. That's what he wants. It's not running if you're making a strategic retreat. Claire, you just described a man who's been stalking and threatening you. You need to get somewhere safe while the professionals handle this. But the divorce can be finalized anywhere. Sarah can handle the paperwork. James can continue his investigation. And you can be somewhere that psychopath Dominic can't find you. Meg's voice softened. Please, Claire, let me help you. I've been waiting 3 years to be your sister again. The tears came again, and this time Claire didn't fight them. I'm sorry. For disappearing. For letting Adrien isolate me from you. For not calling when I should have. We can talk about all that later. Right now, I need you to go pack. I'm looking at flights now. There's one leaving O'Hare at 11 p.m. tonight. Can you make it? Claire looked around her small apartment, the space she'd fought so hard to claim as her own. Leaving felt like surrender, but staying felt like suicide. I'll make it. Good. Text me when you're on your way to the airport. And Claire, don't tell anyone where you're going. Not Adrien, not your lawyer, nobody. Just disappear for a while. After hanging up, Claire stood in the middle of her apartment trying to figure out what to pack for an indefinite exile in Seattle. Her phone buzzed continuously. James calling, Sarah texting, Marcus Chen sending another warning message. She ignored them all and focused on the mechanical task of filling a suitcase. She was almost finished when someone knocked on her door. 3 sharp raps that made her freeze with a sweater halfway into the bag. Through the peephole, she saw Adrien standing in the hallway, looking worse than he had at the coffee shop. His tie was gone, his jacket was rumpled, and there was something wild in his eyes that set off alarm bells in Claire's head. I know you're in there, he called through the door. I saw your lights on. We need to talk. We said everything we needed to say. No, we didn't. I just got a call from Dominic. He's threatening you, Claire. He sent me a message saying he's going to make you pay for breaking up our marriage, for causing me to fire him, for ruining his life. Adrien's voice was strained. I need to know you're safe. Please, just open the door. Claire's hand went to the deadbolt, then stopped. How did Dominic have your number? You said you blocked him. There was a pause. He used a different phone. Look, that doesn't matter right now. What matters is getting you somewhere he can't reach you. I'm handling it. By yourself? Claire, this isn't the time for pride. Dominic is dangerous and he's got nothing to lose. Let me help you. The way you helped me before? By believing everything he told you about me? By putting my name on illegal accounts? By treating me like a problem instead of a person? Claire's voice rose despite her attempt to stay calm. I don't need that kind of help anymore. I'm not asking you to come back to me. I'm asking you to let me keep you safe while we figure out how to stop Dominic. Adrien's palm hit the door with a dull thud. Please, I can't. If something happens to you because of my mistakes, I won't survive it. Claire wanted to believe him. Part of her still responded to the desperation in his voice, still wanted to be the person who could save him from himself. But she'd learned the hard way that saving Adrien meant losing herself. Go home, Adrien. Sign the divorce papers. Let your lawyers handle Dominic, and let me handle my own life. You're making a mistake. Then it's my mistake to make. She heard him stand there for another minute, breathing hard on the other side of the door. Then his footsteps retreated down the hall, and she was alone again. Claire finished packing in record time, grabbed her purse and laptop bag, and took one last look around the apartment that had represented her freedom. She'd been here less than a week, but it had been hers in a way the penthouse never was. Leaving it felt like giving up, but staying felt like dying. She called an Uber and made it to the curb just as a black sedan pulled up. The driver confirmed her name, and she was about to get in when a hand closed around her arm. Claire spun, her heart jumping into her throat, expecting Dominic or Adrien or some nameless threat. Instead, she found herself looking at Marcus Chen. Mrs. Varela, I'm sorry to startle you, but I need to speak with you before you leave. I don't have time. This will take 2 minutes, please. Marcus's expression was grim. It's about Dominic. I know where he is. Claire's Uber driver was watching them with increasing suspicion. She waved him off, watching her escape route drive away, and turned back to Marcus. Talk fast. Dominic has been staying at a warehouse on the south side. I have people watching it, but he's gotten sloppy in the past few hours. He's been making calls, sending emails, leaving a digital trail. Marcus pulled out his phone and showed her a series of photos. Dominic entering and leaving a rundown building, meeting with men Claire didn't recognize. He's planning something big, something that involves both you and Mr. Varela. What kind of something? I don't know yet, but my contact in the police department says there's been chatter about a major operation going down in the next 48 hours. Something involving federal charges, wire fraud, conspiracy. Marcus's jaw tightened. Dominic is going to try to take both of you down, frame you for crimes, ruin Mr. Varela's organization, and disappear with whatever money he's stolen. Then let Adrien's lawyers handle it. That's not my problem anymore. It becomes your problem when the federal charges include your name, when the accounts Dominic set up in your name get flagged by investigators, when you're the one being arrested while Dominic is on a plane to somewhere without extradition. Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice. I know you want to be done with all of this. I understand that. But running to Seattle isn't going to save you if there's a warrant with your name on it. Claire's hands clenched around her suitcase handle. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting you help us stop him. Work with Mr. Varela one last time to make sure Dominic can't hurt either of you. Then you can have your divorce and your freedom, but you'll have them without looking over your shoulder for the rest of your life. And if I say no, then I'll respect your decision and let you go. But I wanted to give you the option. Marcus handed her a card with an address written on the back. If you change your mind, Mr. Varela will be at this location tonight. He's meeting with his attorneys and the FBI to discuss options for dealing with Dominic. Your testimony about the threats you've received could help build the case. Claire stared at the card, her mind racing. She thought about Elena's warnings, about the years it had taken her to escape Adrien's orbit. She thought about the threatening emails, about the photograph of Adrien leaving the coffee shop, about Dominic's promise that this was just beginning. And she thought about the fact that running had never actually solved anything. Tell Adrien I'll think about it, she said finally, but I'm not making any promises. Marcus nodded and walked away, leaving Claire standing on the sidewalk with her suitcase and her fear and a decision she didn't want to make. She pulled out her phone and called Meg back. Change of plans, Claire said when her sister answered. I'm not coming to Seattle, not yet. Claire, what happened? You said, I know what I said, but I can't run. Not from this. If I run now, I'll be running forever. Claire took a deep breath. I need to face this. Face him. Make sure Dominic can't hurt anyone else the way he hurt me. That's not your responsibility. Maybe not, but it's my choice, and I'm choosing to fight. Meg was quiet for a moment. Okay, but I'm coming to Chicago. I'll be on the first flight out tomorrow morning. You don't have to do this alone. Thank you. Claire felt tears threatening again. I've missed you. I've missed you too, little sister. Now go do whatever you need to do, but be careful. And text me every few hours so I know you're still alive. Claire hung up and stood on the sidewalk, watching traffic pass by, trying to find the courage to do what she knew came next. Finally, she pulled up the Uber app and entered the address Marcus had given her. The location turned out to be a law office in the financial district, the kind of place that radiated expensive discretion. Security was tight. Claire had to show ID and explain who she was there to see before being allowed past the lobby. The elevator carried her up to the 15th floor, where a receptionist was waiting. Mrs. Varela, they're expecting you in the conference room. Claire followed her down a hallway lined with abstract art and closed doors. At the end was a conference room with glass walls, and through them Claire could see Adrien sitting at a table with 3 other men in suits and a woman who had FBI written all over her. Adrien looked up as Claire entered, and the relief on his face was almost painful to witness. You came. I came. Claire set her suitcase by the door and took a seat at the far end of the table, as far from Adrien as possible. Doesn't mean I'm staying. I just want to hear what you have to say. The woman with the FBI presence leaned forward. Mrs. Varela, I'm Special Agent Linda Morrison. I've been investigating Dominic Hale's activities for the past 6 months as part of a larger probe into financial crimes. Your husband has been cooperating with our investigation. He's not my husband for much longer. Fair enough. Mr. Varela, then. Agent Morrison pulled out a tablet and turned it to face Claire. We have evidence that Dominic has been embezzling funds, laundering money, and setting up fraudulent accounts in your name and in the names of several other individuals. The accounts he created contain approximately $15 million in illicit funds. Claire felt her stomach drop. 15 million? That we know of, there could be more. The problem is that the accounts are in your name, with your social security number created with forged documents that bear your signature. Morrison's expression was sympathetic but firm. If we move forward with charges against Dominic, you'll likely be swept up in the investigation as well, unless you cooperate with us. Cooperate how? We need you to testify about the threats you've received, the manipulation, the way Dominic used your marriage to Adrien to gain access to sensitive information. We need you to help us establish a pattern of behavior that shows Dominic as the orchestrator, rather than just a participant. Morrison paused. In exchange, we'll work with the prosecutor to ensure you receive immunity from any charges related to the fraudulent accounts. And if I don't cooperate? Then you'll likely be indicted alongside Dominic, and while we believe we can eventually prove your innocence, that process could take years and cost you everything. Claire looked at Adrien, who'd been silent throughout this exchange. Did you know about this when you came to my apartment? No. Agent Morrison contacted me about an hour ago. I tried to call you, but you didn't answer. Adrien's voice was careful. I wanted you to hear this from the FBI directly rather than from me, so you'd know it wasn't another manipulation. How considerate. One of the lawyers cleared his throat. Mrs. Varela, time is a factor here. We have reason to believe Dominic is planning to flee the country within the next 24 hours. If we're going to stop him, we need to move quickly, and we need your cooperation to make the charges stick. Claire felt trapped. Every option seemed designed to pull her back into Adrien's orbit, back into the world she'd been trying to escape. But the alternative was facing federal charges for crimes she didn't commit, spending years proving her innocence, losing everything she'd fought for. What exactly would I have to do? Agent Morrison pulled up a document on her tablet. We need you to sign a statement detailing everything Dominic has done, the threats, the manipulation, the evidence he sent you. We need you to testify before a grand jury about how he used your marriage to gain access to financial information. And we need you to be available for the trial when it happens, which could be 6 months to a year from now. And in exchange, I get immunity. Complete immunity from prosecution related to the fraudulent accounts. You'll also be eligible for witness protection if you feel threatened by Dominic or his associates. I don't want witness protection. I want my life back. Then help us put Dominic behind bars and you'll have it. Morrison leaned back in her chair. I know this is difficult, Mrs. Varela. I know you're trying to distance yourself from this situation. But the reality is that Dominic made you part of this when he started using your identity for his crimes. The only way out is through. Claire closed her eyes and tried to think. Meg would tell her to run. Sarah would tell her to negotiate for better terms. James would tell her to get everything in writing before agreeing to anything. But Claire was tired of other people telling her what to do. I'll cooperate, she said finally, but I have conditions. Name them. First, I want everything in writing. The immunity agreement, the terms of my cooperation, all of it. Second, I want my own attorney present for every statement, every testimony, every interaction with law enforcement. Third, once this is over, I want it made clear in all official records that I was a victim of Dominic's scheme, not a participant. Claire looked directly at Agent Morrison. And fourth, I want Adrien kept separate from my testimony. I'll tell you what Dominic did, but I won't be used to build a case against my husband. Mr. Varela isn't under investigation. Yet. But I know how these things work. You start pulling threads, and you find things you weren't looking for. I'll help you catch Dominic, but I won't be the reason Adrien ends up in federal prison. Agent Morrison and the lawyers exchanged glances. Finally, Morrison nodded. We can work with those terms. I'll have the immunity agreement drawn up tonight. You can review it with your attorney and sign it tomorrow morning. Then we have a deal. Claire stood up. Is there anything else you need from me right now? Just one thing. Morrison pulled out a phone. A burner, from the looks of it. We need you to contact Dominic. Claire's blood ran cold. What? He's been trying to reach you. We've been monitoring his communications. If you respond to him, agree to meet with him, we can set up a controlled situation where we arrest him with evidence of his threats and his intent to harm you. Morrison held out the phone. We'll be watching the entire time. You'll be perfectly safe. You want me to be bait? We want you to help us catch a dangerous criminal before he flees the country. Claire looked at the phone like it was a snake. Everything in her body was screaming at her to refuse, to walk out of this office and get on the next flight to Seattle. But she thought about the threatening emails, about the photograph of Adrien crying, about Dominic's promise that this was just beginning. If she ran now, she'd be running forever. What would I have to say to him? Adrien spoke up for the first time in minutes. No, absolutely not. You're not putting yourself in danger for this. It's not your decision to make. Claire, please. Let us handle this. Let the FBI do their job. You don't have to be the hero. I'm not trying to be a hero. I'm trying to end this. Claire turned back to Morrison. What's the plan? Morrison pulled out a laptop and opened a series of emails. Dominic has been trying to get you to meet him. He's suggested several locations, all of them isolated. We'll have you agree to meet him at a location of our choosing, somewhere we can control, somewhere we can have agents in place to make the arrest. And what am I supposed to say to him? Tell him you want to know the truth. Tell him you're ready to hear what he has to say about Adrien. Appeal to his ego. He thinks he's smarter than everyone else, that he's been playing you both. Let him think he's won. Morrison's voice was calm and professional. We'll wire you. We'll have agents surrounding the location, and the moment he makes a threat or admits to his crimes, we move in. Claire's hands were shaking. She clasped them together under the table where no one could see. When would this happen? Tomorrow afternoon. We'll set it up at a restaurant downtown, public enough that Dominic won't suspect a trap, but controlled enough that we can ensure your safety. And if something goes wrong? Nothing will go wrong. We'll have a dozen agents in position. But if somehow Dominic tries anything, you'll have a panic button that will bring everyone running. Morrison's expression was sincere. I know this is asking a lot, Mrs. Varela, but it's the fastest way to end this and ensure Dominic can't hurt you or anyone else. Claire looked at Adrien, who was staring at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Fear, maybe. Or regret. Or something deeper that she didn't want to examine. If I do this, and it works, and Dominic is arrested, will it be over? Really over? Yes, he'll be facing federal charges with evidence we can prove. He won't make bail, and he won't be able to threaten you from prison. Then I'll do it. The room erupted in a flurry of activity. Lawyers pulling out paperwork, Agent Morrison making calls. People moving with the kind of focused urgency that came with a ticking clock. Through it all, Claire sat in her chair trying to process the fact that she'd just agreed to put herself in the same room as a man who'd promised to destroy her. Adrien moved to the chair beside her, close enough that she could feel his presence, but not touching. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do. You said it yourself. Dominic won't stop until he's made us both pay. This is the only way to stop him. Let me be there. At the restaurant. I can—" "No." Claire's voice was firm. "If you're there, Dominic will know it's a trap. This only works if he thinks I'm coming alone. I can't just sit by while you put yourself in danger. You've been sitting by while I suffered for 3 years. You can sit by for one more afternoon." The words came out harsher than she intended, but she didn't take them back. Adrien flinched but didn't argue. "After this is over, after Dominic is arrested and you're safe, can we talk? Really talk about everything?" Claire looked at him, at the man she'd loved and lost and couldn't quite stop loving despite everything. "I don't know, Adrien. I don't know if talking will change anything. It might not, but I'd like the chance to try." Before Claire could respond, Agent Morrison approached with a thick folder. "Mrs. Varela, these are the preliminary immunity documents. Your attorney can review them, but the basics are all here. Full immunity from prosecution in exchange for your cooperation and testimony." Claire took the folder, feeling its weight in her hands. "I'll have my attorney look at these tonight." "Good. We'll finalize everything tomorrow morning, and then we'll prep you for the meeting with Dominic." Morrison pulled out a business card. "My personal number is on here. Call me anytime if you have questions or concerns." The meeting broke up shortly after that, with people gathering papers and laptops and heading for the door. Claire grabbed her suitcase and was about to leave when Adrien caught up with her in the hallway. "Let me drive you home, please. It's late, and you shouldn't be alone right now." "I'll take an Uber." "Claire." Something in his voice made her stop. "I know I don't have the right to ask you for anything. I know I destroyed your trust and your faith in me. But please, just let me do this one thing. Let me make sure you get home safely." Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the overwhelming stress of the day. Maybe it was just the fact that she was tired of fighting everything and everyone all the time. Whatever the reason, Claire found herself nodding. "Fine, but just a ride home, nothing else." Adrien's car was in the underground parking garage, a sleek black Mercedes that probably cost more than most people's houses. He opened the passenger door for Claire, and she got in, feeling strange and out of place in this echo of her old life. They drove in silence for the first few minutes, the Chicago skyline glittering outside the windows. Finally, Adrien spoke. "I've been thinking about what you said, about how I never trusted you, how I kept you at arm's length." His hands tightened on the steering wheel. "You were right. About all of it. I spent so long building walls that I forgot why I was building them in the first place. Adrien, we don't have to do this now." "I know, but I need to say it while I still have the courage." He glanced at her, then back at the road. "My father was a violent man. He hurt my mother, controlled her, made her life hell. And when I was 16, she tried to leave him. She packed bags, made plans, got as far as the state line before he found her and brought her back." Claire had never heard Adrien talk about his parents. In 3 years of marriage, he'd mentioned them exactly once, saying they were both dead and he didn't like to discuss it. "What happened to her?" "She died 6 months later, car accident supposedly, but I always wondered if my father had something to do with it. I wondered if loving him, trusting him, had gotten her killed." Adrien's voice was rough. "So I promised myself I'd never be like him. I'd never hurt someone I loved. And I thought that meant keeping people at a distance, controlling situations instead of people, building an empire where I had all the power so no one could hurt me the way my father hurt my mother. But you became a different kind of controlling, a different kind of dangerous. I know, I see that now. I thought I was protecting you by keeping you separate from my world, but I was really just repeating the same pattern. Control disguised as protection." Adrien pulled up to a red light and turned to look at her fully. "I'm sorry, Claire, for all of it, for not seeing who you really were, for not trusting you, for letting Dominic poison our marriage because I was too afraid to actually be vulnerable with you." The words hung in the air between them. Claire wanted to accept the apology, wanted to let it heal some of the hurt. But apologies without action were just words. "I appreciate you telling me this," she said carefully. "But it doesn't change what happened. It doesn't give me back 3 years of my life. I know. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking you to understand why I am the way I am. So maybe, after all this is over, you won't hate me quite as much. I don't hate you, Adrien. I hate what you did. I hate what we became. But I don't hate you. They pulled up to her apartment building, and Adrien put the car in park but didn't unlock the doors. I meant what I said earlier, about letting you go, about not fighting the divorce anymore. His voice was barely above a whisper. But I want you to know that if I could go back and do everything differently, I would. I'd choose you over the business. I'd trust you over Dominic. I'd be the husband you deserved instead of the prison guard I became. Claire felt tears burning in her eyes. But you can't go back. None of us can. No, we can't. But maybe, after tomorrow, after this is all over, maybe we can start fresh. Not as husband and wife, but as two people who learned hard lessons about what love really means. Maybe. Claire unbuckled her seatbelt. Thank you for the ride. She was reaching for the door handle when Adrien spoke again. Claire, be careful tomorrow. Dominic is unpredictable, and even with FBI protection, things can go wrong. If anything happened to you because of my failures, nothing's going to happen. I'll be fine. Promise me something? What? Promise me that if things go sideways, if you feel threatened even for a second, you'll run. Don't be brave. Don't try to help the FBI. Just run and let them handle it. Claire looked at him, at the genuine fear in his eyes. I promise. She got out of the car and walked to her building without looking back. Only when she was safely inside her apartment with all the locks engaged did she let herself fall apart. She cried for the marriage that could have been, for the man Adrien might have become if fear hadn't shaped him, for the 3 years she'd lost trying to love someone who didn't know how to love her back. She cried until she was empty, until there were no more tears left. And then she pulled herself together, called Sarah Chen to review the immunity documents, and started preparing for tomorrow. The next morning dawned gray and cold, matching Claire's mood. She'd barely slept, running through scenarios in her head of everything that could go wrong. By the time Agent Morrison called at 9 a.m. to confirm the plan, Claire had mentally prepared herself for disaster at least a dozen times. The meeting is set for 2 p.m. at Bistro Moderne on Michigan Avenue. It's a public restaurant with multiple exits and will have agents positioned throughout the building. Morrison's voice was crisp and professional. Dominic confirmed he'll be there. He thinks you're coming alone to hear his evidence about Adrien. And you're sure he won't suspect anything? We're as sure as we can be. He's arrogant, and he thinks he has the upper hand. That's working in our favor. Claire spent the rest of the morning getting ready. She dressed carefully, jeans and a sweater, nothing that screamed FBI operation, but nothing that looked like she was trying too hard either. Sarah came by at noon with the finalized immunity documents, and Claire signed them with shaking hands. You don't have to do this, Sarah said for the third time. Yes, I do. At 1 p.m., Agent Morrison arrived with the wire. It was smaller than Claire expected, just a thin device that clipped to her bra and a microphone disguised as a button on her sweater. Remember, all you have to do is get him talking. Get him to admit to the threats, to the embezzlement, to setting up the accounts in your name. Once he makes those admissions, we'll move in and make the arrest. Morrison checked the wire one more time. You'll have backup the entire time. Nothing is going to happen to you. Claire nodded, not trusting her voice. The drive to the restaurant felt surreal. Claire sat in the back of an unmarked FBI vehicle, watching the city pass by, trying to calm her racing heart. When they pulled up to Bistro Moderne, she could see agents positioned around the building. A man reading a newspaper at the bus stop, a woman walking a dog, a couple having coffee at the outdoor tables. We'll be watching and listening the entire time, Morrison reminded her. The phrase, I need some air, will bring us in immediately if you feel unsafe. Claire got out of the car and walked into the restaurant on legs that felt like they might give out at any moment. The hostess greeted her with a professional smile. Reservation for 2 under Whitmore. Right this way. The table was in the middle of the dining room, visible from all angles. Perfect for surveillance, terrible for Claire's nerves. She sat down and ordered water, then waited. Dominic arrived exactly on time. He looked different than Claire had imagined, younger, more polished, with the kind of expensive grooming that came from stolen money. He slid into the seat across from her with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Claire, I'm so glad you finally agreed to meet with me. I was beginning to think you'd choose to remain willfully ignorant about your husband. Claire forced herself to meet his gaze. I'm here because I want the truth. All of it. No more games. No more games, Dominic agreed, signaling the waiter. Let's order first, shall we? I find these conversations go better with good wine. And just like that, the trap was set. All Claire had to do was keep him talking long enough for him to hang himself. She just hoped she'd survive long enough to see it happen. Dominic ordered a bottle of wine that probably cost more than Claire's monthly rent, then settled back in his chair with the easy confidence of someone who believed he held all the cards. Claire watched him, her heart hammering against the wire hidden under her sweater, and forced herself to breathe normally. You look nervous, Dominic observed, swirling wine in his glass. Don't be. I'm not here to hurt you, Claire. I'm here to liberate you. Liberate me from what? From the lies Adrien has been feeding you. From the illusion that your marriage failed because of me. Dominic leaned forward, his expression almost sympathetic. I was just the catalyst. The problems in your marriage existed long before I started pointing them out to Adrien. Claire's fingers tightened around her water glass. You did more than point out problems. You manufactured evidence. You intercepted messages. You deliberately destroyed our relationship. I revealed the truth that was already there. Adrien never trusted you, Claire. He was looking for reasons to doubt you from the moment you said, I do. I just gave him the evidence he was already searching for. Evidence you fabricated. Did I? Dominic's smile was razor sharp. Or did I simply show Adrien what he wanted to see? A man who trusts his wife doesn't believe doctored photos. A man who loves his wife doesn't investigate her like a criminal. Adrien was looking for an excuse to keep you at arm's length, and I provided it. But the desire to push you away? That was all him. The words stung because they contained a kernel of truth. Claire had spent weeks wrestling with the same question. How much of their marriage's failure was Dominic's manipulation versus Adrien's fundamental inability to trust? But she couldn't let Dominic see that he'd struck a nerve. Why did you do it? What did you gain from destroying our marriage? Dominic took a long sip of wine, considering his answer. Initially, control. Adrien was getting too close to you, starting to confide in you about business matters. I couldn't have that. You were an unknown variable, and unknown variables are dangerous in our line of work. Your line of work being crime. Such an ugly word. I prefer alternative business solutions. Dominic's smile widened. But yes, if we're being honest. And honestly, Claire, you were never supposed to be anything more than a trophy wife. Beautiful, obedient, content to spend Adrien's money and ask no questions. But you wanted more. You wanted intimacy, partnership, trust. You wanted things Adrien couldn't give. Because you made sure he couldn't give them. I made sure he wouldn't. There's a difference. Dominic set down his glass. But that was 2 years ago. Things changed. I changed. I realized that Adrien was using me as a scapegoat for his own failures, blaming me for decisions he made, for the distance he created. So I started taking what I was owed. You started stealing from him. Dominic's expression flickered. Surprise. Quickly masked. Who told you that? Does it matter? I know about the embezzlement. I know about the gambling debts. I know you're running scared. Claire leaned forward, channeling every ounce of confidence she didn't feel. The question is, why am I here? What do you really want from me? For the first time, Dominic looked unsettled. He glanced around the restaurant, his eyes scanning the other diners with sudden suspicion. Claire's heart rate spiked, terrified he'd spotted the FBI agents, but he turned back to her with a tight smile. I want you to understand what Adrien really is, who he really is, before you throw away your leverage. My leverage. You're still his wife, still have access to information, to accounts, to secrets that could bury him. Dominic pulled out a tablet and slid it across the table. I've compiled everything. Every illegal deal, every money laundering operation, every body he's buried, metaphorically speaking, of course. With this information, you could negotiate a divorce settlement that would set you up for life. Or you could go to the FBI and trade it for immunity from the financial crimes he committed in your name. Claire stared at the tablet without touching it. You're trying to get me to destroy Adrien for you. I'm trying to help you see the whole picture. Adrien Varela is not the victim in this story, Claire. He's a criminal who built an empire on blood and lies. I worked for him for 7 years, And in that time, I watched him ruin lives, destroy competitors, and manipulate everyone around him, including you. Dominic's voice dropped. The only difference between him and me is that I'm honest about what I am. You're honest? You've been lying to both of us for years. I've been showing you both the truth you were too blind to see. Adrien is a monster who occasionally plays at being human. I'm the monster who stopped pretending. Dominic tapped the tablet. Take it. Review the information. And then decide whether you want to be the woman who walked away with nothing or the woman who made him pay for everything he took from you. Claire looked at the tablet, then back at Dominic. She could see the calculation in his eyes, the way he was watching her reaction, gauging whether his manipulation was working. And she realized with sudden clarity what he was really doing. He was trying to make her into a weapon aimed directly at Adrien's heart. You don't care about helping me, Claire said quietly. You care about using me to hurt Adrien in a way you can't hurt him yourself, because you're too much of a coward to face him directly. Dominic's mask slipped, and for just a moment, Claire saw genuine rage flash across his features. Coward? I spent 7 years doing Adrien's dirty work while he kept his hands clean. I made sacrifices, took risks, built his empire while he got all the glory. And the moment I became inconvenient, he threw me away like garbage. So this is revenge. This is justice. Dominic's voice rose slightly, drawing glances from nearby tables. He caught himself and lowered his tone. Adrien thinks he can just move on, marry someone new, start fresh while leaving me with nothing. But I'm going to show him what it feels like to lose everything. His business, his reputation, his freedom. And you're going to help me do it. And if I refuse, then the FBI will be very interested in the accounts you opened, the money you laundered, the crimes you committed. Dominic smiled coldly. Oh, I know about your little immunity deal, Claire. Did you really think I wouldn't have eyes inside the investigation? Your immunity only covers crimes you didn't know about. But what if I have evidence that you did know, that you were an active participant in Adrien's operations? Claire felt ice in her veins. You're bluffing. Am I? Dominic pulled out his phone and scrolled through images. Here's you at Adrien's office going through files. Here's you meeting with his accountant. Here's you signing documents related to property purchases. All time-stamped, all documented, all showing a pattern of involvement. He looked up at her. I can make you look guilty, Claire. I can make you look like Adrien's partner rather than his victim. And when I'm done, that immunity deal won't be worth the paper it's printed on. Those photos are fake, just like everything else you've created. Maybe, but they'll be convincing enough to create reasonable doubt. Convincing enough to make the prosecutor think twice about their star witness. Dominic leaned back in his chair. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to take that tablet. You're going to use the information to destroy Adrien. And in exchange, I'll make sure those photos never see the light of day. I'll disappear, you'll be free, and Adrien will get exactly what he deserves. Claire stared at him, her mind racing. She needed to keep him talking, needed to get him to say something incriminating about the threats, the embezzlement, the manufactured evidence. But he was too careful, dancing around explicit admissions while making his intentions clear. Let me ask you something, Claire said. Did you ever actually care about Adrien? Or was it always just about what you could take from him? The question seemed to catch Dominic off guard. His expression shifted through several emotions before settling on something that might have been genuine hurt. I cared. In the beginning. Adrien gave me a chance when no one else would. He saw potential in me, trusted me with his business, treated me like a brother. Dominic's voice was almost wistful. But that was before I realized that his trust came with chains. Before I understood that in Adrien's world, you're either in control or being controlled. There's no middle ground. So you chose to be in control. I chose to survive. I chose to stop being Adrien's loyal dog and start being my own man. Dominic's expression hardened again. And now I'm choosing to burn down everything he built, starting with you. So make your choice, Claire. Partner with me and walk away wealthy and free, or stay loyal to Adrien and watch him drag you down with him. Claire took a deep breath, feeling the wire against her skin, knowing every word was being recorded. You know what I think? I think you're terrified. I think Adrien discovered your embezzlement and you're scrambling to survive. I think you're so desperate that you're threatening me, manipulating me, trying to turn me into your weapon because you're too weak to fight your own battles. Dominic's face flushed dark red. Weak? I'm the one who built his empire while he played the respectable businessman. I'm the one who got my hands dirty so he could stay clean. I'm the one who stole millions of dollars and is about to face federal charges, Claire interrupted. Who manufactured evidence to destroy a marriage because you were jealous of any relationship Adrien had that didn't center you. Who is so pathetic that the only way you can hurt him is by threatening his soon-to-be ex-wife. Dominic stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Several diners looked over, and Claire saw one of the FBI agents, the woman with the dog, move closer to their table. You have no idea what you're dealing with, Dominic hissed. I've given you a chance to do this the easy way. But if you want to play it hard, fine. I'll destroy you both. I'll leak everything to the media, the FBI, everyone. And when I'm done, you'll wish you'd taken my offer. Are you threatening me? I'm promising you. Adrien Varela is going to lose everything, and you're going to be collateral damage unless you wise up and FBI, don't move! The restaurant erupted in chaos. Agents emerged from every corner, guns drawn, converging on their table. Dominic's eyes went wide with shock and rage as he realized what had happened. He looked at Claire, and the betrayal in his expression was almost comical. You set me up. I stopped being anyone's victim. Claire stood up, putting distance between them as agents surrounded Dominic. You tried to make me a weapon against Adrien, but I chose to be my own person instead. Agent Morrison appeared beside Claire, her hand on Claire's shoulder. Mrs. Varela, are you all right? I'm fine. Dominic was being handcuffed, still staring at Claire with something like disbelief. This isn't over. I have lawyers. I have evidence. Dominic Hale, you're under arrest for embezzlement, wire fraud, extortion, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent. Agent Morrison continued reading him his rights while other agents led him toward the door. As they passed Claire, Dominic stopped struggling. You think you've won? You think this changes anything? Adrien is still the same man he always was. He'll hurt you again, Claire. It's what he does. Maybe, Claire said quietly, but that's my choice to make, not yours. They led him away, and suddenly the restaurant was quiet again, except for the murmur of shocked diners. Claire stood there, feeling strangely empty now that it was over. Agent Morrison guided her to a chair. You did great. We got everything we needed. Threats, admissions about the embezzlement, evidence, tampering. He's looking at 20 years minimum. Morrison smiled. You're free, Mrs. Varela. It's really over. Free. The word should have felt triumphant, but all Claire felt was exhausted. She gave her statement to the FBI, answered their questions, and signed the final paperwork confirming her immunity. By the time she stepped outside the restaurant, it was nearly evening. The sun was setting over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. A car was waiting at the curb. Not an FBI vehicle this time, Adrien's Mercedes. He got out as soon as he saw her, his expression uncertain. I heard what happened. Morrison called me. He stopped a few feet away, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to come closer. Are you okay? I'm tired, but I'm okay. Claire looked at him, really looked at him, trying to see past the expensive suit and the careful control to the damaged man underneath. You were right. Dominic did confess. Everything. Good. He deserves what's coming to him. Adrien hesitated. Can I drive you home? Claire started to refuse, then stopped herself. She was tired of fighting every gesture, tired of treating every kindness like a trap. Okay. They drove in silence for a while, the city lights coming on as darkness fell. Finally, Adrien spoke. I signed the divorce papers. My attorney will file them tomorrow. You should be officially free within a few weeks. Claire felt a twist in her chest that might have been relief or might have been grief. Thank you. I also talked to my accountants. All the money in those fraudulent accounts? It's being returned to the people Dominic stole it from. The accounts in your name are being closed. Within a month, there won't be any paper trail connecting you to any of my business operations. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. I put you in danger with my paranoia and my inability to trust. The least I can do is make sure you're safe going forward. Adrien's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I also wanted to tell you something. I'm selling the business. Claire turned to stare at him. What? Not all of it. Just the parts that are questionable, the operations that exist in gray areas. I'm restructuring everything to be completely legitimate. No more dancing with the law, no more justifying questionable decisions as business necessities. He glanced at her. It's going to take time, maybe a year or more. But I'm done living the way I've been living, done being the man I've been. Why? Because I'm leaving you? Because I finally see what that life cost me. It cost me you. It cost me the chance at something real. It cost me the ability to trust anyone or let anyone truly know me. Adrien's voice was rough. I can't get back the 3 years I wasted, but I can make sure I don't waste the next 30 the same way. They pulled up to Claire's building, and this time Adrien did unlock the doors. But before Claire could get out, he spoke again. I know it's too late for us. I know I destroyed whatever we had, but I wanted you to know that you changed me, Claire. Maybe not in time to save our marriage, but in time to save myself from becoming exactly like my father. He looked at her, and there were tears in his eyes. Thank you for that. Even if it came at the cost of losing you. Claire felt her own tears threatening. I hope you mean it, Adrien. I hope you really do change. Not for me, but for yourself. I will. I promise you, I will. She got out of the car and walked into her building without looking back. Only when she was in her apartment with the door locked did she let herself cry. She cried for what they'd lost, for what they'd never really had, for the pain and the waste and the 3 years she could never get back. But underneath the grief was something else. Something that felt like the first breath after being underwater too long. Freedom. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal proceedings and paperwork. The divorce was finalized with surprising speed. Adrien didn't contest anything, signed everything put in front of him, and made sure Claire received a settlement that was generous without being controlling. He gave her enough to start over comfortably, but not so much that she'd feel obligated to him. Dominic's trial was set for 6 months out, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. His lawyers were already negotiating a plea deal. According to Agent Morrison, he'd likely spend the next 15 to 20 years in federal prison. Claire started therapy, working through the trauma of her marriage and the complicated feelings she had about Adrien. Her therapist helped her understand that she could hold multiple truths at once, that Adrien had hurt her deeply, that he'd been manipulated by Dominic, that she'd been both victim and survivor, that she could grieve the loss while celebrating the freedom. Meg came to visit for a week, and they spent hours talking about everything Claire had held inside for 3 years. They laughed and cried and started rebuilding the sisterhood that Adrien's isolation had nearly destroyed. I'm proud of you, Meg said on her last night in Chicago. For standing up to Adrien, for helping catch Dominic, for choosing yourself even when it was hard. I'm proud of me too, Claire admitted, and she meant it. She also reconnected with old friends from before her marriage, women she'd lost touch with as Adrien's world had consumed her own. They welcomed her back without judgment, just love and support, and the kind of friendship she'd forgotten existed. And slowly, week by week, Claire started to remember who she'd been before Adrien Varela. She got a part-time job at a small art gallery. Nothing fancy, but something that reminded her she had skills and talents beyond being someone's wife. She started painting again, filling canvases with all the emotions she'd suppressed for 3 years. She made her small apartment feel like home, decorating it with colors Adrien would have hated, and furniture that was comfortable rather than expensive. She learned to be alone without being lonely. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, Claire was at the gallery when Sarah Chen called. I wanted to give you a heads up. Adrien is getting married again. Claire felt her stomach drop. What? To who? I don't know her name, but according to the society pages, he's been seeing someone for the past month. A therapist, apparently. Someone he met when he started going to counseling. Sarah paused. Are you okay? Was she okay? Claire examined her feelings, surprised to find that underneath the initial shock was something close to relief. Yeah, I'm okay. I hope he's different with her. I hope he learned something. You're more generous than I would be. I'm not being generous, I'm being honest. Adrien's happiness doesn't threaten mine anymore. We're separate people living separate lives. What he does doesn't affect me. Claire realized as she said it that it was true. I hope he finds what he's looking for, just not with me. After hanging up, Claire stood in the gallery surrounded by beautiful art and felt something settle in her chest. The final piece of her healing clicking into place. She didn't need Adrien to be miserable to validate her choice to leave. She didn't need him to fail to prove she'd been right. She could let him go, really let him go, and trust that she'd made the right decision for herself regardless of what happened to him. That evening, Claire was cleaning up the gallery when someone knocked on the glass door. She looked up to see Adrien standing outside, looking uncertain. For a moment, she considered pretending she hadn't seen him, locking up and leaving through the back. But she'd spent 3 years avoiding difficult conversations, and she was done with avoidance. She unlocked the door and let him in. "Hi," he said. "Hi." Claire didn't move to hug him or invite him further inside. "Congratulations on your engagement." Adrien winced. "You heard about that. I wanted to tell you myself, but I wasn't sure if you'd want to hear from me." "It's fine, Adrien. You don't need my permission to move on with your life." "I know. But I wanted you to hear it from me that I'm trying to do things differently this time. I've been in therapy 3 times a week since the divorce. I've been working on understanding why I am the way I am, why I push people away, why I choose control over connection." He took a breath. "And I wanted to thank you again for being brave enough to leave, for showing me that I needed to change, for—" "Adrien," Claire held up a hand, "I appreciate what you're saying, but I'm not the person you need to thank or explain yourself to anymore. Your fiancée is. She's the one who needs to know you're committed to being different. You're right. I needed you to know that your suffering wasn't for nothing, that walking away from me changed my life for the better, even if it didn't feel that way at the time." Claire studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation or performance. But what she saw was genuine transformation, or at least the beginning of it. He looked lighter somehow, less burdened by the weight of secrets and control. "I'm glad you're getting help," she said finally. "I'm glad you're trying to be better. Just make sure you're doing it for yourself and for her, not to prove something to me." "I am. I promise." Adrien moved toward the door, then stopped. "Can I ask you something? Are you happy?" Claire thought about the question. Was she happy? She thought about her small apartment, her part-time job, her rebuilt friendships, and her sister's weekly phone calls. She thought about the paintings in her living room and the therapy sessions that were helping her heal. She thought about the fact that she could make decisions without fear, could go where she wanted without checking in, could be herself without worrying it would displease someone else. "Yeah," she said, surprised by how true it was. "I am happy. Not in the way I thought I would be when I married you, but in a way that's real and sustainable and mine." Adrien smiled, and it was the first genuine smile she'd seen from him in years. "Good. That's all I wanted to know." He left then, and Claire locked the door behind him. She finished closing up the gallery, turned off the lights, and walked out into the Chicago night. The city sprawled around her, full of possibility and promise, and for the first time in years, Claire felt like she belonged to herself, rather than to someone else's vision of who she should be. 6 months later, Claire was offered a full-time position as assistant curator at a prestigious art museum. She accepted without hesitation, finally rebuilding the career she'd abandoned when she married Adrien. The job was challenging and fulfilling, and she threw herself into it with the passion she'd once reserved for trying to fix her broken marriage. She also started dating, casually at first, nothing serious. Men who made her laugh, who respected her boundaries, who saw her as an equal rather than a prize to be won. None of them turned into anything long-term, but that was okay. Claire was learning that she didn't need a relationship to be complete, that she could be whole on her own. On the 1-year anniversary of her divorce being finalized, Claire went back to the coffee shop where she'd met with Adrien and James Rivera all those months ago. She ordered the same coffee she'd had that day and sat at the same table, but everything felt different now. Her phone buzzed with a text from Meg. "Happy Independence Day. Proud of you, sis." Claire smiled and texted back, "Thank you. I'm proud of me too." She thought about sending a message to Adrien, some acknowledgement of how far they'd both come. But she decided against it. That chapter of her life was closed, and reopening it, even just to say hello, felt like a step backward rather than forward. Instead, she pulled out her sketchbook and started drawing. She drew the coffee shop, the people around her, the life she'd built from the ruins of her marriage. And as her pencil moved across the page, Claire realized something profound. She'd spent 3 years trying to make Adrien love her the right way, trying to be enough for someone who couldn't see her value. She'd fought and struggled and nearly lost herself in the process. But in the end, the greatest love story wasn't about finding someone who completed her. It was about learning to complete herself. Claire finished her sketch, paid for her coffee, and walked out into the bright afternoon. She had plans to meet friends for dinner, a new exhibit to curate at the museum, a life that was entirely her own. And as she walked down the Chicago streets with her head held high, she felt something she'd been searching for throughout her entire marriage. Peace. Not the kind of peace that came from avoiding conflict or pretending everything was fine, but the deep, bone-deep peace that came from knowing she'd survived the worst, fought her way back to herself, and come out stronger on the other side. She was no longer Mrs. Adrien Varela, the invisible wife of a powerful man. She was Claire Whitmore, artist and curator and survivor, and so much more than anyone's wife. She was her own person, living her own life, making her own choices. She was free, and that freedom, earned through pain and courage, and the hardest decision she'd ever made, was worth more than any marriage could ever be. Years later, Claire would look back on the woman who'd walked into Adrien's office with divorce papers and barely recognize her. That woman had been so certain she knew what she wanted, so desperate to escape, so convinced that ending her marriage was the finish line. But Claire understood now that it had just been the starting line. Everything that came after, the fear and the uncertainty, the battle with Dominic, the hard work of rebuilding herself from the ground up, that was the real journey. And at the end of it, she'd found something more valuable than the perfect marriage she'd once dreamed of. She'd found herself. And unlike a marriage built on lies and manipulation and fear, that was something no one could ever take away.